everyone. Thank you for coming tonight. And I have been looking at the subject I'm going to talk about today for quite some time. I grew up as a kid that saw the reality TV show Boom, and 19 Kids and Counting was one of my favorite shows growing up. So I also grew up in the era where Teen Mom was the coolest show around when I was a teenager. But before we had Teen Mom, 19 Kids and Counting, of course, my camera is going to start moving while I go. That's great. I love that for me. So 19 Kids and Counting was a very popular show that I used to watch all the time. And recently, it was something that I could dig into a little bit more with some scandal that I'm sure a lot of you are aware of, but I'm not so sure that you're aware of who it connects to that is very popular today, especially in the month of February 2026. So I'm just going to get into it and I'm going to pull up my PowerPoint like we're in a classroom. Um, so today's live has a lot of stuff about Mike Huckabee, and I'm sure that you know why he's popular right now in mainstream media. He is stationed in a country in the Middle East for all of us to represent America if you're an American citizen. And he has a lot of connections to the Duggar family. So there were a lot of other connections as I dove into this that I found to be a little bit bizarre. So it's something that I just wanted to go over. This is a topic that means a lot to me. I think that it means a lot to almost everyone in America right now. And I think that we need to take things like this seriously. So, um, today's show is just titled Huckabee Represents Me. Um, and that's what I decided to go with because I thought that this next title was a little bit aggressive. So, um, there that is. Thank you guys for coming. I see some of the comments in there. Thank you, Monsters Mom 5606 for being here. And Crystal, you knew I was a girl. I know you had to. Um, so oh, that is savage. So I'm gonna get into it. And the first thing I have is actually this video. Okay, so I know that you may be thinking, how the heck does this make any sense with Mike Huckabee? And it actually is super relevant because the Duggars lived in Arkansas. Mike Huckabee is a politician from Arkansas. Before he was a politician, he was also a pastor, very intertwined in the Baptist church network. So, I think more than that, though, it's really relevant as I review this to talk about who he was surrounding himself with continuously, and the pattern that is pretty clear, and how that all intertwines here. So, his appointment as a politician representing us. Sorry, I had a little bit of a brain. I don't know for a second. So this is Mike Huckabee. If you have no idea what he looks like, this is him. He's great. This is a very short clip. All the clips I have tonight are pretty short. I think the longest one's like 4 minutes. But they are all little snippets of a big part of this story because I did not feel comfortable saying some of these things with my own interpretation. I think it's important to hear it from either Mike Huckabee himself or the victims throughout this process or the short clips of the news because I don't want any of these words to be something out of my own mouth. I'm just presenting information I feel like a lot of people are not aware of. I don't want you to believe everything I say just because it comes out of my mouth. I want you to make your own conclusions about how you feel about this and how you feel about someone representing America in a foreign country that has this track record and representing you as an American in that foreign country. And I think that's something we need to do a big self-reflection on. So here's the clip. from February 2026. So this is before the big famous interview that's going viral right now. And this is Mike Huckabee talking about IDF soldiers and holding them accountable.
12,000 of the bravest of the brave, the soldiers of the IDF, the largest component, are American citizens. In my son's unit, I don't want to mention the unit, half of them are lone soldiers from America, France, Belgium, who are fleeing because they cannot travel. They are outed. The Hague is looking for them. And the question, very practical question, I don't know whether the American embassy is ready for this. When the time comes, if they ever want to travel, even to the United States, even the United States, there have been calls, I guess, our new mayor of New York wants to basically obey the Hague over America. So I want to ask you a very practical question. To protect the best of the best, what will happen? Because I think eventually it's going to happen and be tested somewhere in this world. They're going to grab an American citizen they've identified. They know who they are. They know thousands of their names. They're preparing cases. One of my son's comrades had to flee Germany. Another had to flee South Africa, arrested. Another had to flee Belgium. When is it going to come to America? Are you prepared? And what will be done at that moment so they can be secure in what they have done for all of Am Yisrael and all of America, too? They fight for America. So what will be done? Are you prepared? Is America prepared for when they will be arrested somewhere in this world?
Very timely, because just last Wednesday, sitting at the Blair House with Marco Rubio and Prime Minister Netanyahu, Secretary of State Rubio brought up specifically, and he was the one who brought it up, that the U.S. is committed to doing everything it can to neuter both the ICC and the ICJ, the two entities that are pushing for these prosecutions, because the U.S. is very aware that if they can do this to someone who served in the IDF, they will do it to President Trump the moment he leaves office. They will do it to Secretary Rubio. They will do it to Vice President Vance. They might do it to me. There's no limit. These people have no sense of propriety or no sense of even right and wrong. It is a level of hate and a level of lawfare that is very dangerous and frankly is utterly unfounded by anything in legitimate law. So I have an extraordinary sense of confidence that I can tell you that the U.S. government is not just talking about this, it is actively pursuing a way to make it impossible for the ICC and the ICJ to carry out these nefarious actions against people for having dutifully served their country and their cause. And here's the kind of things they're talking. Serious sanctions being placed on anyone and the countries who participate in it. It's one thing to say we're not going to do business with Israel. But when a country decides it's not going to do business or is not going to be allowed to do business with the United States, they put themselves in a very serious position of jeopardy economically. So it's a good question, and it's one that has the absolute utmost attention of this administration. And there are many efforts that will address it and prevent that from happening.
Okay, and then I'm sure a lot of you are aware of the other viral thing with Mike Huckabee right now, and that is the Tucker Carlson interview. And that interview is super bizarre. If you watch the whole thing, I think that everyone should go and watch it. It's two parts, I think, actually. There is one where a Palestinian is interviewed who became an American citizen before the Mike Huckabee interview is released. And then Tucker's shows are pretty long, so these are just some short clips of that, and they're actually from his YouTube. so that we can just watch the most viral parts, because I know everyone's not a nerd like me and likes to watch that. That's totally fine. And this interview is at the American Embassy in Israel. Tucker's going to talk about it, but shortly after the interview, him and his team were detained for questioning before being released to be able to return to the United States of America. It's a very bizarre incident. I remember when it went viral online, I thought it was a joke, to be honest with you. It was not a joke, and Tucker will talk about it in his own words here.
You said in Iraq and Afghanistan, the U.S. military killed more civilians than the IDF did in Gaza. You just told me that. I never heard that before. And my question is, how do you know that? What are those numbers?
And I'm trying to explain to you that there were extraordinary efforts to keep
You
the
don't
number
know the numbers,
flat.
do you?
I think they were tens of thousands. I'll get them for you.
Well, you brought it up. That's the only reason
Yeah,
I'm pushing
But I'm wearing a flag. I work for a country, and you pretended or alleged that somehow I'm not loyal to this, and that I'm criticizing my own country, and
they
I'm
did a better
not.
job than the U.S. military in Iraq and Afghanistan. And I said, what are the numbers? And you said, I don't know. So on what basis are you making the claim that the IDF in Gaza spared more civilians than the U.S. Army and Marine Corps did in Afghanistan and Iraq? Why are you saying that? Like, on what basis are you saying that?
From the conversations that I've had with the people who fought there. And I don't have the exact numbers for you.
All right. And then these are two other really important short clips.
So we do this interview. We're set to fly out. Our two producers, they're called into rooms. Security, whoever this is, won't let them go. So I don't really know what's going on at this point. I'm like, where are our guys? We got to get out of here. So one of them comes out and he says, that was the weirdest experience in my life. They asked me questions about the interview. Who did you speak to? Well, the U.S. ambassador, Mike Huckabee. What did you talk about? Why did you ask those questions? They're asking my producer, like, where do you work? How many people work there? Do you go to the office? Where is the office? What are their names? They're doing like an intel op and humiliation exercise on my producer. Meanwhile, the youngest man who was traveling with us is still in a room being questioned. So I pull over one of the guys and said, we got to get out of here. So I don't know what this is about. It's outrageous. And this woman comes up to me and says, look, let's just go. We're going to bring you to the plane and he'll come later. I said, no, it's my producer. He's being interrogated, asked totally over the top, fully inappropriate questions that have nothing to do with security at all. You know, pull up your website, show us your text exchanges with other people on your staff. Those are not relevant questions. And I said, I want this guy out now. Let's go. You know, we got to go. And they said, no, just leave him here. We'll bring him to the plane later. Twice they told me that. Just leave your guy behind. No, I don't think so. So I was enraged by this. The interesting thing is, I never heard from Huckabee or anybody to this moment from the U.S. Embassy about what security did to my producers. They didn't ask us. And instead, Huckabee went out and called me a liar. So it raises the question, who exactly is Huckabee working for?
Okay. And then there's this last one right here.
In the entirety of the world, there are about 16 million Jews total.
Okay.
They have connection to this land.
Do they? If Bibi's family, we know they lived in Eastern Europe. There's no evidence they ever lived here. He's not religious.
But
in what sense how do we know
ancestrally,
that? Do you have his family tree? No, we don't.
Do you?
He doesn't. So no one does. That's the point.
But
so how do we know that he has any connection to this land at all?
And if there has been a practice of Judaism?
He doesn't practice Judaism in any rigorous way. His ancestors didn't live here. They didn't speak the language, and there's no evidence they ever lived here. So on what basis does he have a right to be here?
Very much speaks the language. His family has fought for the land.
Dodging a very obvious question, which is, where does this right come from? How do we know that Bibi, specifically Bibi's ancestors, ever lived here? How do we know that?
I'm not sure if I understand your question.
All right. So I feel like that's a very straightforward question to be asked. And I feel like if you watch the whole interview and then you watch the PR afterwards, you can tell that there may be a need for some Andrew Colvett PR that may be helpful for them, because that's working really well for Turning Point USA. However, it is a very valid question. And I think that's a very valid question when you get into that argument about any country. And I think that we should have learned historically that just because you had claim to land at one point does not mean you have that forever. And I'm not saying that either of those groups have or do not have the right to that land, But I do think that there becomes a certain point when you have to both come to the table. And you can see throughout history that there are some refusals from certain things moving forward. As much as people don't want to talk about the Oslo Accords, I do think the history and the timeline of that is very interesting with Bill Clinton, who was also a politician in Arkansas. So I do think it's really important to think about that in the grand scheme of things. I don't think it was a fair place to put people that had lived there for thousands of years in, to be able to properly represent themselves without having their own representation in the way that it happened. And I know that a lot of people will give you a PR exercise and try to shut you down of an argument, but as a human, you know what is right, you know what is wrong, and you can feel when someone is trying to manipulate you into a conversation. And all you need to do is go back and look at some maps and see that the West Bank has always had Palestinians, people that have descended from Abraham in it as well, both Christians and Jews that lived there. And it was for a very long time under Jordanian rule in the, Syria, Palestine area. And then we had all of those decrees and we had all of those agreements and we had all of those land changes for a long time. And when Israel became a state, the West Bank was weirdly separated, but it was still under Jordanian rule. This whole issue did not happen until the war that broke out in between the groups in the Middle East that were very upset by what was happening, and then these militant groups that were also upset. And both sides were agitating each other. I think that people need to realize that there's nobody that's right and there's nobody that's wrong in this instance. But I think that two wrongs don't make a right unless you make like four wrongs. And then at that point, when do you stop? So it's just the ethical. Oh, there is a huge bug on my arm. My grandpa's a beekeeper. So I do have a bee tattoo right there. Also, fun fact, I used to collect bugs as a child. So you guys can think that I'm a nerd for that. And yes, I do agree. I see your comments. I think that Allie is calling Mike Huckabee shady with his answers. And I think that a lot of us have had these same talking points said to us. But I also think that the argument becomes when you are trying to talk logically about this situation and how to remedy it, people want to act like you hate someone. And that's not where most of us are coming from at all. So just remember, don't let people control your emotions. Only you are in control of your emotions. So thank you, Allie. All right, moving on. Oop. Okay, I have two more short clips from Tucker. And this, it's on my face. I have two more short clips from Tucker. These are his short reels on YouTube. This is the interview I'm talking about over here on the right with the Palestinian that had lived there for thousands of years since the birth of Jesus Christ. And it's a really beautiful and humbling story. And honestly, if you need something to make you feel good and you just want to put something on in the background, maybe have some tissues near you if you're a little bit sappy. I think that the love that he speaks about in the Levant is such a beautiful, profound story after you hear what he's been through and how much he loves the Jewish people and how much he loves where he came from. And it's very sad that he no longer lives there.
You said in Iraq and Afghanistan, the U.S. military killed more civilians than the IDF did in Gaza. You just told me that. I never heard that before. And my question is, how do you know that? What are those numbers?
And I'm trying to explain to you that there were extraordinary efforts to keep
You
the
don't
number
know the numbers,
of
do you?
I think they were tens of thousands. I'll get them for you.
Well, you brought it up. That's the only reason I'm pushing you.
But I'm wearing a flag. I work for a country, and you pretended or alleged that somehow I'm not loyal to this and that I'm
You just
criticizing my own
said they
country,
did
and
a
I'm
better
not.
job than the U.S. military in Iraq and Afghanistan. And I said, what are the numbers? And you said, I don't know. So on what basis are you making the claim that the IDF in Gaza spared more civilians than the U.S. Army and Marine Corps did in Afghanistan and Iraq? Why are you saying that? Like, on what basis are you saying that?
From the conversations that I've had with the people who fought there. And I don't have the exact numbers for you.
All right. And then this short clip is actually from that Palestinian interview, just in case you don't watch it, which you will be missing out, but that's your choice.
You get mistreated by the Israeli government, the IDF, holding a weapon made in your country. So have you called Mike Huckabee about this?
We have given up on politicians.
He's not a politician. He is an emissary of the president who works for the United States State Department. I'm the son of an ambassador. I know how this works. And his job is to reflect the views of his president and to defend his country in a foreign country. He represents America's interests in a foreign country.
That's not what he said on the last TBN interview. He said, my job is to secure the blessings for Israel so America can get blessed.
If we bless you, we will be blessed. And if we curse you, we will be cursed.
Has America been blessed by this policy, do you think? I've lived here for 56 years. I don't think it's been blessed by this policy at all. I don't see the blessings.
Oh, I am so sorry. I just sneezed. I'm so glad I did not have my camera on for that. Okay, so this is the photo on that interview. I like Tucker's face always. I think that his facial expressions are super interesting because I feel like when you're looking at this is on my face. That's embarrassing. So, anyways, this is what I was talking about and looking at. Thank you, Hasnoet. So I do agree Tucker and Massey for 2028 would be really great candidates. I think we need to remember that there is really no left nor right. There's American, and everyone's going to have different views all the time. Dividing yourself into tribal groups like that and separating yourself from the tribes that are meaningful, like your family, local community, and religious groups and things like that, is a very dangerous, slippery slope. So I love what I was saying is I love Tucker's face here. And it looks like he's like trying not to laugh, but this is just his face when he's asking a serious question. And I feel like Tucker has balls of steel because some of the interviews I have seen this man do are the most awe-inspiring interviews that I have ever seen. He interviewed Putin with a straight face and asked him very difficult questions and was completely honest and transparent with us about how he thought it was going and then how it ended and how surprised he was and how well spoken he was. And I felt like he wasn't biased. And I think that a lot of us are used to biased media. I don't remember turning on the news or hearing a press conference or hearing even people from the oversight committee of our government try to take a jab at the other side or try to have some type of agenda going on other than just bettering the country that you live in. A little bit weird, but I'm not a politician. So he also did a crazy interview with Sam Altman. And the interview with Sam Altman is very interesting. It's kind of long. I think I've watched it like 3 times now. But in his interview with Sam Altman, Tucker goes on to ask him questions about a whistleblower that ended up passing away. And that whistleblower that passes away is something that's now being looked into as maybe the whistleblower not taking his own life, even though it was kind of written off at that to begin with until people started speaking out. And Sam Altman acts like he read all of the documents on this case and he'd been keeping up with it and it was a dear friend. And Tucker doesn't really back down. He still asks the questions that he wants to ask and follow-up questions, but he's also not biased about the way that he responds. So Sam Altman literally comes out when he hears what Tucker's saying and asks, "Do you think I did it?" And it's the most awkward thing I've ever seen because Sam tries to almost have this empathetic questioning back and trying to throw Tucker off. But Tucker doesn't really let his emotions get the best of him in that way. And I think that he gets a little bit heated in this interview. And I think that most people would with some of the things that were said, because I do think some of the things were very disrespectful, especially from someone that's parents were in a foreign country representing the United States of America, and someone that has given his life to being the free media after leaving the controlled media. And I think a lot of people want to bash Tucker for coming from a family that is wealthier, but I think a lot of us don't think about the fact that he doesn't have to work if he doesn't want to, if he's that wealthy. So what is he doing? He puts a lot of effort into this, even in him explaining that he got detained over there and had to get back for a flight here for other interviews. All of the effort he's put in with investigations into what happened in Butler, Pennsylvania, and his 9/11 investigations and everything else. I think that Tucker really pours himself into that and wants to have and give his life meaning. And that's the way he wants to serve his country. So I think that it's a little bit bizarre people attack him for that. All right. So, this is Mike Huckabee being under fire about this from a quick news clip that goes over how the Middle East is reacting to this.
Israel is a land that God gave through Abraham to a people that he chose. It was a people, a place, and a purpose.
U.S. Ambassador to Israel Mike Huckabee has sparked outrage over comments made during an interview with American commentator Tucker Carlson.
I'm not going to let you off on this because you have said it 3 times that God gave this land to this people. And so it is entirely fair for me with respect to ask, what land are you talking about? Because I just read Genesis 15, as I have many times. And that land, I think it says, from the Nile to the Euphrates, which is, once again, basically the entire Middle East. So God gave that land to his people, the Jews, or he didn't. You're saying he did. What does that mean? Does Israel have the right to that land? Because you're appealing to Genesis. You're saying that's the original deed.
It would be fine if they took it all.
Huckabee also called Area C in the occupied West Bank, where repeated settler attacks have forced much of the Palestinian population to flee, part of Israel.
So they're moving all these Americans, people from around the world, into settlements subsidized by Americans in the West Bank.
Now, they're not moving them from around the world to the settlements. They're people who make Aliyah. They come.
I'm just saying,
these are Israelis who live in Israel.
Well, there are a lot of people.
And Area C is Israel.
Okay.
Several Arab countries have responded by denouncing Huckabee's statement as reckless, provocative, and irresponsible. But they aren't new. In June, the ambassador told Bloomberg News that a Palestinian state in the occupied West Bank is no longer a U.S. policy goal, and that Israel's Muslim neighbors could give up their land instead to create one. The ambassador's apparent disregard for regional sovereignty did not stop there. He also listed several neighboring countries, many of them close U.S. allies, as fronts in Israel's regional war.
I keep hearing Israel's fighting a 7-front war. What are those 7 fronts?
Well, you got Lebanon. You have Egypt. Now, Egypt is not an active war, but you have the Muslim Brotherhood within Egypt. You've got the Muslim Brotherhood in Jordan. You've got Syria.
Wait, they're fighting a war with Jordan?
With the Muslim Brotherhood that is in Jordan, not directly with Jordan, not the government of Jordan.
But are they?
You've got Hezbollah, Houthis.
In Yemen.
You have Hamas in Gaza. You have the threats that come from Iran.
But Huckabee did have praise for one country.
One place is an exception is the Emiratis. And I love those folks because they are so progressive, but they're really trying to do things that are beyond what anyone else in the region. They change their textbooks. They teach that Israel is not a nation they should hate or seek to annihilate.
His apparent disregard for the sovereignty of existing countries in the region, including Palestinian rights to statehood, has alarmed several Arab states and U.S. allies. It marks yet another step in which U.S. policy seems to be increasingly out of line with its Arab neighbors and increasingly deferent to Israel's government.
I feel like enough people didn't really speak about that part of the interview. And I feel like the most viral clips were the ones about the DNA question, which I also think is relevant if you're going to proclaim that. Do I think that that's what Tucker said or what he could be interpreted saying? I'm not really sure unless you're being super biased. I think that the way that he suggested it was not in a disrespectful way. And I think that he does call himself a jerk at one point. And it's a very bizarre, almost like Tucker was talking about the interview with the people that were detaining them, like an embarrassment ritual for him to continue to call himself a jerk, which I don't really know if you're a jerk if you're saying what everyone else is thinking. I think that if you're a jerk, it's like if you're being intentionally rude. And I don't really think Tucker does that unless he's provoked to a certain point. So, I don't know. It's a little bit wild thinking about that in whole. So, um, this is him again, if you needed to see his serious face. Um, the Middle East has had a lot of backlash with that last statement if they could take it all. This is one of the joint statements. There's a few of them on X and different accounts. And I actually follow, I think, almost every foreign country in the Middle East because I like to get my news straight from the source. And I think that it's really interesting to see people in the Middle East wish Americans and Christians a Merry Christmas, among a bunch of other things, and to see multiple perspectives of things. Because I also think that the news externally to the United States of America does not always represent us well. And I think that if you start looking into the FARA registrations, you can see a lot of our media is paid for. So what you're hearing about another country, you need to think about who is this serving, who is telling me this, and what document can I go to reference and make sure this is true. And I think that AI has made that a lot more difficult because a lot of people will ask Google a question. There is AI at the top of Google at this point in your life. You can go to ChatGPT, you can go to Gemini, you can go to Grok, you can go to all of them, and that's great. But all of those things pull from other places, and those things can be easily manipulated. And I'm sure that you've seen that if you've used AI for a little bit, that it's always good to use it almost as a search engine and ask it to give you credible sources and then go to those sources if you're going to use it. But you should not let AI replace your thinking because it's very easy for people to use AI as an excuse for almost anything now. In the point that someone could say, oh, that's not real. AI created that. And I think it gets to the point when you have to ask yourself, okay, what is real? And ask yourself that question out loud 1 to 2 times. I had someone say AI is real to me at Christmas. And I looked at my husband across the room and I said it out loud. And I said, AI is real. And I said it again faster and I said, AI is real. What does that sound like? You come to your own conclusion with that one. But who is Mike Huckabee? That's who we're going to talk about today. And I am, Ivan, I didn't pre-schedule it, so it's kind of my fault, I think. So sorry about that. I kind of pivoted from starting and finishing part 2 because there were a few more things I wanted to do. And I've been diving into Mike Huckabee for a while, so I felt like it was a great time to talk about some of these things that I'm not sure a lot of people know. So Mike Huckabee is the 44th governor of Arkansas. And also being from the Midwest myself, every time I see Arkansas, I literally want to say Arkansas. I don't know why. I wish I knew why. I wish I knew why I thought that way. But I think that about Illinois too. I always want to say Illinois, and I don't know why. It's weird. So, he was the Republican presidential nominee in 2008 and 2016. His wife's named Sarah Huckabee. He has a daughter named Sarah Huckabee Sanders, David Huckabee, and John Mark Huckabee. He has his education from Southwestern Baptist Theological Seminary, graduated in 1980. And the other education he has, I don't know how to say that word, but a Baptist university he graduated from in 1975. And he went to Hope High School, 1973. He was born in the same town as Bill Clinton, Hope, Arkansas. So that's interesting when you think about where he's coming from as well. The other thing I think a lot of people don't talk about with Mike Huckabee is his clemency statistics. Mike Huckabee is a very interesting guy when you're looking at these. So in total, It is reported that he had 1,033 pardons and communications in 10.5 years as governor. So 10 and a half years as governor. Sorry, I read that out loud like a robot. More than twice the total of his three predecessors combined. He had 507 clemencies and 17, or the previous three combined, I said that's so wrong, had 507 clemencies in 17.5 years. So again, he had numbers are so hard. He had 1,033 pardons, and the people before him had 507 clemencies. The previous three people before him in 17 years, which was almost twice the amount that he led. So basically, the average we're looking at is one clemency every 3.7 days for over a decade. Bill Clinton, Frank White, and Jim Guy Tucker had 507 clemencies in 17 and a half years combined. So it's a little bit interesting that that's more than double. And there's some statistics and facts down here from specific sources, but that's just me repeating the same thing over and over because I don't know how to read numbers out loud. This is him again. This time you will see two flags going on here in the background. Not always a thing. So a little bit interesting. This is him at a very famous place in Israel. All right. So Mike Huckabee's greatest moments. We're going to talk about these for a second. These are all pretty relevant when you're looking at Mike Huckabee as a whole. So Mike Huckabee in 1997 defended convicted serial deleter and violator. And he is the top one up there. In 2015, Mike Huckabee defended a child violator and predator. He is the one right here, the Duggar boy. And in 2019, President Trump granted a pardon on behalf of the Lord's Ranch, Ted Schul, betraying dozens of children that were victims to horrendous things that we'll speak about in a moment, to the request of Mike Huckabee. And it says this on all the articles you can read about it with the request and who influenced it. And then it's even in the news. So I have a short clip talking about that. In 2026, the famous clips we just went over, Mike Huckabee was in an interview with Tucker Carlson, and he defended Philadelphia's right to delete innocent humans, including children, in that interview. So it's a little bit weird looking at that. Don't look too much into this guy's eyes on the right. I feel like you can feel it, and you just shouldn't look at his eyeballs. We should have censored that out. I don't know why. I feel like eyes are, I 100% agree with the viewpoint that eyes are a view into the soul. And I think sometimes when you're looking at pure malevolence, you should not look it in the eyes for too long. So Mike Huckabee wrote a letter to this man on the right saying, "My desire is that you be released from prison." Like a pen pal. So Lois Davison tells her story, and she, in quote, says, "If not for Mike Huckabee, Wayne DeMond would have been in prison and Carol Sue would have been with us this year for Christmas." And it's a clip I have that we're going to play in a minute. On the left, you see a younger Mike Huckabee, and he is the one being a pen pal with this man on the right that he helped get out of prison. Not really sure what this man has going on, but I don't know why I feel like looking at him, and I'm not trying to be judgmental at all. I seriously feel like this man is like a psyop disguise going on. Like the glasses don't match the rest of it, and then the necklace and the ring are a little bit off, and the watch. I'm like, what is going on here? I don't know. It's just throwing me off. So, there's a lot of defending those types of people throughout here. So here is Mike Huckabee talking about his defense of the Duggars. We're going to go into this real quick.
When the Duggars came out and their son had molested their child, you more or less said that you felt sorry for their parents.
Pam, let me tell you something. You have no idea what you're talking about. You don't know that family, and I do. You don't know what those parents did and how they worked to try to take care of their entire family. I'm going to mark her down as undecided.
No, I'm very decided.
Good.
I stand up
Thanks.
for the rights of the
Bye.
children
Have
in
a
this
nice
world.
day.
All right. So going back to who the heck is Josh Duggar? You're going to see a lot of pictures of Josh Duggar with a lot of famous politicians. And I think it's important when we're looking at that as a whole, keep that in mind. This is after the young events that we're going to talk about that became a little bit more famous later on because someone tattled to Oprah. So, and it was on an accidental basis. We'll go into that too. But you can see him here. He's pictured with all types of important politicians, mainly the GOP, mainly the Republican Party. He was definitely a conservative in the conservative circles. I also found it interesting. Some of the people are a little bit more liberal. You see him with Mark Rubio right there and other people. And then you also see him with some other people that seem to have a lot of the same interests Mike Huckabee has. You can see him with Ted Cruz up there. Love that picture of them together. And also on the far right, you can see him with a very famous Speaker of the House that we have right now. And Sarah Palin on the bottom left. I was really surprised with that one. I don't know why. I mean, the bottom left and right, actually. Lots of pictures with Sarah Palin. Those are different outfits. So, different outfits. Going back into how this all intertwines. So, it's a lot going on here. I'm going to try to run through as fast as I can and make sure that you have all the information that you have to make your own informed decision about how you feel about this person representing you and representing the United States of America. In the 1980s and 1990s, I feel like what I saw was a clear foundation building block campaign of a long trail of making the wrong decision and defending the wrong people. So in 1987, the Lord's Ranch in Arkansas was first licensed in Arkansas to provide mental health services. 1989 to 1990, Mike Huckabee serves as the Arkansas Baptist Convention president, and he was the best politician in the Brotherhood. That's a quote from one of these news articles. 1990 was the first documented allegations of improper restraint, physical abuse, and punishment for those who opted out of Bible study at the Lord Ranch. 1993, the Lord Ranch staff member reports counselor threw boy against lockers and hit him in the head. So that also says from that article that DHS found it a report that finds the report credible. So take that with what you will. That's a child being thrown up against the locker. I don't know if it's because he went to Bible study or not, but it's a little bit sickening to think about you taking children in that need help and treating them that way. So we're going to get into something that I think is intertwined with the decisions you see across the board. And we're going to specifically hear from Mike Huckabee about what I'm going to review next. Oh, maybe.
Well, what responsibility do you have in this horrible tragedy that developed?
Wolf, my only official action in this was I denied his commutation. It was actually given by Jim Guy Tucker when Bill Clinton was governor back in 1992. It was on my desk. I did consider it. I even thought that he had met the criteria for parole and supported it. I wished I hadn't, but I didn't parole him, and governors don't parole people in Arkansas, nor can they stop a parole. And that's the tragedy, I think, that this went through several years and many different people, and all of us failed. That's the truth. All of us failed.
Because there's a letter that you apparently wrote that was published in the Arkansas Times to Wayne Dumond, in which you said to him, "My desire is that you be released from prison. I feel that parole is the best way for your reintroduction to society to take place." Did you write him such a letter?
I wrote it because that's when I denied him, and a parole meant that he had to have supervision. Had I granted his commutation, there would have been no supervision at all. I wasn't comfortable with that. He had an exemplary prison record. He had the recommendations. He had met all the criteria. And that's why I think all of us are very sad. But I did not commute his sentence. And his sentence was commuted several years before I became governor. That made him parole eligible. I not only denied his commutation once, actually 3 or 4 times when he presented it in the course of the time that I had the case during my tenure as governor.
There was an article written back in 2002 in the Arkansas Times that quoted 3 former parole members, basically as saying that you influenced them in a significant way to let this guy go. One, Charles Chastain, writing, "He made it obvious that he thought Dumond had gotten a raw deal and wanted us to take another look at it." Another, Irmer Pondexter, "I signed the parole papers because the governor wanted Dumond paroled." And a third, Deborah Springer Sutler, "For Governor Huckabee to say that he had no influence with the board is something that he knows to be untrue. He came before the board and made his views known that Dumond should have been paroled." Are they telling the truth?
Well, if they're not, the reality is that I was invited to the board by the chairman, Leroy Brownlee. He asked me to come as the new governor back in 1996. I talked to them. The discussion came up, but it wasn't about Dumond. The overall discussion was about my general policy toward clemency. Those are 3 people out of 7 that waited 6 years before they ever came forward and said there was pressure. And every one of them had been appointed by either Bill Clinton or Jim Guy Tucker before me. If as a brand new Republican governor, I was able to go in and convince a board that every one of whom had been appointed by Democrat governors before me, I'm a pretty persuasive guy. And the other members of that board would give you a different story. And interestingly, these people who make these allegations not only did so 6 years later, but did so after I did not reappoint them to $75,000 a year jobs to which they had been appointed by a previous Democrat governor.
So the charge you're making is they were politicizing, they were blaming you out of political reasons. Is that what you're saying?
And Wolf, that's what's so heartbreaking about this. There are families who are truly, understandably and reasonably grief-stricken. And for people to now politicize these deaths and to try to make a political case out of it rather than to simply understand that a system failed and that we ought to extend our grief and heartfelt sorrow to these families, I just regret that politics is reduced to that.
I don't even know how to respond when I watch that clip, because I feel like if you're really stepping back, you're really looking at it, he starts off trying to manipulate that situation into sounding a lot different than it is. And the news anchor doesn't really back down. And I feel like that's when news used to be a little bit more bipartisan. Politicians obviously were not bipartisan. You can see that as he tries to attack other politicians in that instead of taking responsibility for actions, or when he was in control of the system that let that man free. I don't know. If you're the governor, be the governor. If you're not the governor, don't be the governor. If you don't want to be the governor, don't be the governor. But the last person that was before him, Bill Clinton and Jim Guy Tucker, it's really interesting when you look at the Whitewater scandal and how 2 of those other popular politicians at that time were basically both shot in the foot out of the race of Arkansas. One later did become president, and I don't know if that would have been possible today just because of the way I think that scandal would have followed people. I do think that scandal's really interesting again, and I can go over that at a different time. But I don't think that Huckabee would have ever been the governor of Arkansas if that wouldn't have happened. So come to your own conclusion with that one. We're going to talk about Wayne DeMond here. Again, caution looking into this guy's eyes. Oh, I'm not calling anyone the G word. I'm just saying that word used to mean like of all nations or all nations in ancient Hebrew or biblical Hebrew. So I don't know if most people know that, but around the time of World War II, modern Hebrew became a really big thing. And I think that actually people speak both Yiddish and modern Hebrew for the most part if you live in that part of the world or you have that type of heritage, but they're different a little bit. It's like a different dialect. And then modern Hebrew interprets some of those words differently. And it's a very interesting history and timeline of how that happened. And I think that when you're looking at a biblical context, that you can take those words as one thing, but when they were written, it meant people of all nations. So don't let that be a dig at you. It's kind of funny when you think about it because it's really not a dig by what it actually means. Okay, so yes, I know. It's like father, like daughter, both governors. All right, caution over here on the eyeballs. Be careful. Oh, I'm like doing this because I'm looking at my screen over there. I need to be like, okay, that was awkward. I thought that was going to look a lot cooler than it did. Obviously not a cool kid. So in 1972, first arrest for violent crime and intimate charges. Marsh went through and helped change some of these words. So thank you, Marsh, if you're watching this, because I probably would have read the actual quote out there. Oh, thank you, Marsh. I'm glad that you thought I looked cool. You're making me feel cool, dude. All right, 1984, he was convicted of violating 17-year-old Ashley Stevens, who was a Clinton relative. Pre-conviction history, conviction for assault and his alleged involvement in slaying one another, intimate violation. And he admitted deleting. So deleting a person, DeMond openly admitted to beating a man to deletion with a claw hammer in Lawton, Oklahoma. I don't even know how to interpret that one with granting someone a shorter sentence. So in 1997, Huckabee writes a letter to DeMond stating, and it has this famous line in it where Huckabee writes, "My desire is that you will be released from prison," to a man that deleted someone with a claw hammer. So there was a legal pressure on the parole board. And this is not me saying this. ABC News is talking about in this direct quote, "At their invitation, I went to their meeting. Someone brought up his case. If the governor wants in, he gets it." Parole board member is quoted for saying. There were victims' warnings as well. So Ashley Stevens met with Huckabee face to face and told him, this is actually a quote. I need to take a second. So a victim spoke to Mike Huckabee face to face, and this victim is quoted saying to Mike Huckabee on TV, "This is how close I was to Wayne DeMond. I will never forget his face. And now I don't want you to ever forget my face." And I feel like that speaks for itself with that one. Obviously, with his decisions that follow, he might have forgotten her face. All right, so I have another short clip that is interesting because it's like the same time when he's talking about this, and he has a little bit of a different scenario on what happened. Whoops. Whoopsie.
And joining us now, the former governor of Arkansas, that is the current Republican presidential candidate, Governor Mike Huckabee. Thanks very much for coming in.
My pleasure, Wolf.
Let's talk about this Wayne DeMond case, which all of a sudden has become an issue. People are making very serious accusations against you, including Lois Davidson, the mother of this young woman who was raped and killed after Wayne DeMond was released from prison. She's blaming you in part, and I want you to listen to what she said on the CBS Early Show earlier today.
I don't think Mr. Huckabee ought to be president. I don't think he should be running the country
Because?
with a because I don't think he did enough background research on Wayne DeMond's life. And if he didn't do that kind of research, I don't think he is going to be good for the country.
All right, well, that's a powerful statement from a woman. Our heart goes out to that woman, of course, but we need your response.
My heart goes out to the Shields family. There's no way to ever say anything that would bring some type of resolution to the understandable grief they have. And quite frankly, I don't blame people for being angry, whether they're angry at me or they want to be angry at the governor before me who actually commuted his sentence, which I didn't do, or angry at the parole board for paroling him. And if I'm the object of the anger, I understand that. I accept that.
Well, let me ask you this.
There's nothing right about this situation. It's a horrible thing.
Well, what responsibility do you have in this horrible tragedy that developed?
Wolf, my only official action in this was I denied his commutation. It was actually given by Jim Guy Tucker when Bill Clinton was governor back in 1992. It was on my desk. I did consider it. I even thought that he had met the criteria for parole and supported it. I wished I hadn't, but I didn't parole him, and governors don't parole people in Arkansas, nor can they stop a parole. And that's the tragedy, I think, that this went through several years and many different people, and all of us failed. That's the truth. All of us failed.
Because there's a letter that you apparently wrote that was published in the Arkansas Times to Wayne DeMond, in which you said to him, "My desire is that you be released from prison. I feel that parole is the best way for your reintroduction to society to take place." Did you write him such a letter?
I wrote it because that's when I denied him, and a parole meant that he had to have supervision. Had I granted his commutation, there would have been no supervision at all. I wasn't comfortable with that. He had an exemplary prison record. He had the recommendations. He had met all the criteria. And that's why I think all of us are very sad. But I did not commute his sentence. And his sentence was commuted several years before I became governor. That made him parole eligible. I not only denied his commutation once, actually 3 or 4 times when he presented it in the course of the time that I had the case during my tenure as governor.
There was an article written back in 2002 in the Arkansas Times that quoted 3 former parole members, basically as saying that you influenced them in a significant way to let this guy go. One, Charles Chastain, writing, "He made it obvious that he thought DeMond had gotten a raw deal and wanted us to take another look at it." Another, Irmer Pondexter, "I signed the parole papers because the governor wanted DeMond."
That is so awkward. I just realized that was a copy and paste from before. So we're going to move on. That I put that there. Sorry about that. So after the murder, after the deletion release in 1999, he is released from Arkansas prison. In 2000, he violated and deleted Carol Sue Shields in Missouri, mother of 3, and she was suffocated. Also suspected in violating and deleting a pregnant woman named Sarah. And in 2003, he's convicted of this deletion and sentenced to life. In 2005, he died in prison. He actually died from cancer of the vocal cords. So I guess that God took his voice away. The victim's mother has a statement here, Lois Davidson, and she quotes, "If not for Mike Huckabee, Wayne DeMond would have been in prison and Carol Sue would have been with us this year for Christmas." And that's a very emotional thing to think about because that woman lost her daughter. Wayne DeMond was not the only person in this trail of bad decisions. We have Maurice Clemens. So 1989, the first incarceration Maurice has is at age 17. He's sentenced to 108 years for robbery, burglary, and theft. He has prison violence, and it's quoted that it was over and over again. He had failure to obey, engaging in intimate activity, failure to obey, and possession or introduction of prescription substances, and shooties. I don't know what that is. And that's from a prosecutor. And he, in Washington, is quoted, arrest on charges of violating a child, yet was allowed to post bail in 2009. I don't even understand how that's possible with the first arrest, but whatever. Recent behavior, his family quoted throughout this that he made his family, including young relatives, undress and parade around. Take that with what you will. This was the next quote, and this was about the Clemens sentence. Whoops.
A lot of people want an explanation of this is a bad hombre, and you let him out. Why?
Well, Bill, first of all, I think the tragedy of this, if I could have known 9 years ago this guy was capable of something of this magnitude, obviously I would never have granted the commutation. It's sickening. The two people in this country that I value the most are soldiers and police officers, because they're the only thing standing between our freedom and total anarchy. And in the case of this particular individual, he was sentenced to 108 years for 2 crimes when he was 16. The Post-Prison Transfer Board, the process, and I'll be very brief about this, but to understand, they recommended to me as governor for his commutation, which didn't release him. It simply cut his sentence to 47 years. That would give him parole eligibility. That was the commutation. I'm responsible for that, and it's not something I'm happy about at this particular moment.
Now, did you study it? Did you study it? I mean, look, governors have a lot of this stuff.
All right. So what did this person do? I have a wrong picture here. I think that's one of his prosecutors. That's great. So there's a lot of things in here. Basically, this person gets out and takes the lives of 4 police officers in Washington. He takes the life of Mark Renninger, 39 years old, Officer Ronald Owens, 37 years old, Officer Tina Griswold, age 40, and Officer Greg Richards, age 42. So it's quoted that the most law enforcement officers being deleted by a single perpetrator in all of U.S. history was committed by this person that was let out. And here is the news talking about that.
Well, Pierce County Sheriff's detectives say case closed. Suspect Maurice Clemens is dead, and several people who police say helped him escape are being charged tonight. Clemens was the man who executed 4 police officers at a Lakewood, Washington coffee shop Sunday morning. He was found in South Seattle last night by an officer investigating a stolen car. When Clemens didn't cooperate with that officer's demands, he was shot and killed. It turns out he had one of the fallen officer's guns in his pocket. KXLY4's Tanya Dahl is live in our newsroom with more. Tanya.
Well, Robin, after 48 hours on the run, Clemens is dead tonight, and at least 4 of his associates have been arrested in connection with Sunday's tragic shooting.
This is not a tragedy. This is a horrendous crime.
It started at this Lakewood coffee shop and ended in the early morning hours in South Seattle. The man suspected of killing 4 police officers, shot and killed by a man in blue.
The whole thing happened very, very fast. And bottom line is the Seattle police officer is still here, suspect's not.
The Pierce County Sheriff's Office says an officer on patrol spotted a parked running car. It turned out to be stolen, and that's when he felt someone's presence behind him. The officer recognized Clemens, who was apparently armed, and tried to make a move for a gun.
Lucky that he's still here, because he was coming up behind him, and if he wouldn't have noticed that and slipped into his training and put himself into an offensive position, it's quite obvious and quite evident what could have happened there.
Clemens was shot and killed. Turns out he was carrying a gun belonging to one of the slain police officers. The 37-year-old was a prime suspect in the fatal shootings of 39-year-old Sergeant Mark Renninger, 37-year-old Ronald Owens, 42-year-old Greg Richards, and 40-year-old Tina Griswold. Griswold has a sister and family in the Spokane area.
When you help a criminal, you become a criminal.
While Clemens was on the run, investigators believe a getaway driver waited and helped him escape from this Lakewood coffee shop. Then family and friends provided shelter, cash, and first aid treatment from a gunshot to his belly from Sunday's shooting. Those alleged accomplices made an appearance in court today.
We are all relieved to have Maurice Clemens off the street, but there is still work to be done here. We are not going to rest until everyone involved in this murder in any way is brought to justice.
And Griswold's sister, Tiffany Ryan, lives in Spokane, and this is part of a statement that she issued today. She says, quote, "We didn't realize it before, but we needed Clemens to be caught for us to move on. Now my family can begin to mourn the death of my sister." And the Pierce County Sheriff's Office says more arrests could follow. Reporting live in the newsroom, Tanya Dahl, KXLY4, HT News.
On KXLY.com, we have a special coverage section dedicated specifically.
All right. So he helped get this person out. And as this person left, I don't think that this is something that you could ever predict. But I think when you're speaking about a violent criminal, it's something that's very important to take into consideration with allowing them to be out of the prison walls with the public. These are the 4 slain police officers that will never go home to be with their families again. But that's not the only bad decision that we see continue throughout this time. There seems to be a clear pattern that I'll let you connect the dots on your own. But there is the famous story of the Lord's Ranch. So there are allegations of textual and physical misuse. I'm laughing because of the way Marsh replaced that word with textual. I'm not laughing because of what that word is. I would not be saying any of this if that was the case, to be honest with you. So there's allegations of that in dozens of children from 1976 to 2016. Again, 1976, before he becomes a politician in that state. The convictions in this area were because of government bribes to increase Medicaid payouts, which I'll go over to. Huckabee asked on behalf of the owner, Ted Sewell, to give the convicted criminal clemency after 2.5 years, 2.5 years. I don't know why I keep reading it like that. After 2.5 years of a 7-year sentence, he requested and influenced this with Donald Trump when he was president, and it was granted in 2019. You can come to your own conclusion on if you think that was a good idea for the general public, and I will play this clip about it.
Hi, I'm Brooke Wallace, filling in for Max Brantley with your Arkansas Times News headline updates for Tuesday, July the 30th. Yesterday, after we taped, the White House announced that President Trump had commuted the prison sentence of Ted Sewell, a former operator of a behavioral health company in Arkansas, who was convicted on bribery and fraudulent charges in July of 2016. The White House said Trump's decision to commute Sewell's sentence was influenced by former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee and former U.S. Attorney Bud Cummins. During the 4 years covered by the indictment 2007 to 2011, Sewell's companies, which provided both residential and outpatient services, received some $125 million in Medicaid reimbursements from the state through the Arkansas Department of Human Services. Federal prosecutors said Sewell intended to help his companies by funneling money to a top administrator at DHS and former legislator Stephen Jones by way of communicating through a middleman, West Memphis Juvenile Probation Officer Philip Carter. Carter and Jones pleaded guilty to bribery and served sentences in federal prison. Sewell was scheduled to be released in February 25th of 2023. Also yesterday after we taped, State Representative Mickey Gates, a Republican from Hot Springs, agreed to plead or no contest to felony income tax charges in Garland County Circuit Court. Under the plea agreement, Gates will receive 6 years probation and will be obligated to pay the taxes he owes to the state from 2012 to 2017. He'll also have to pay penalties and interest for taxes owed 2012 through 2014. A special prosecutor said Gates had failed to file his taxes for 15 years from 2003 to 2017, but the statute of limitations limited the number of charges to 6 years. Gates entered his plea under Act 346, also known as the First Offender Act, which allows a first-time offender, after completing the terms of probation, to petition a judge to dismiss charges and expunge the offender's record. Gates handily won his re-election bid in November. Gates' attorney said because the Act 346 treatment is not considered a felony conviction, the plea agreement does not require him to resign. Gates has no plans to resign, his attorney said. Well, today marks the beginning of early voting in the Democratic primary for Little Rock's House District 36. The seat came open when Charles Blake resigned to become Mayor Frank Scott Jr.'s chief of staff. The candidates are Denise Ennett, a homemaker, Philip Hood, a Workers' Compensation Commission clerk, Daryl.
Okay, that's the most relevant part of that. I don't know why I kept that playing. I also feel like her sometimes reading when I do a PowerPoint. So welcome to my classroom. Welcome back. Welcome back. Pay attention. Pay attention. I'm joking. Okay, so the Lord's Ranch and finances. This is where it gets kind of interesting. You look at the map, everyone's talking about different states that start with an M. Why is no one talking about Arkansas? I feel like we should call it Arkansas because it's got a lot of sassy politicians that are trying to deter from the spotlight, even though they want to be in the spotlight, like people from Arizona. Everyone is sitting here talking about Walls and all of the scandal going on there. I think when you hear what I'm about to say, you're like, okay, so why have we not spoken about that? The Lord's Ranch had a lot of fraud. So this guy was convicted, and he was convicted of a bribery and fraud for gaming the Medicaid system of more than $125 million in state medical funding. So that's the state funding. And there were annual payments from Huckabee's administration, $8.5 million annually. So $8.5 million is what he was receiving. And it's quoted even in the news articles. So recipient of $8.5 million annually in Medicaid money from Huckabee's DHS. In 2002 to 2008 alone, there was 95 million dispersed. So that's a lot to take in. 2002 to 2008, before the mortgage crisis, when $1 million was a lot more than $1 million today, you could probably still buy a really nice house for $100,000 in most places in America. They got $95 million for this ranch for Medicaid funds with a place that had been riddled with complaints of the assault and the allegations and physical torture of children. As a pastor, also was a politician around that time. Well, he was also very influential in that time. Don't quote me on that because I don't know the exact years off the top of my head. There's too many years going on here. So hundreds of millions of dollars in Medicaid funding throughout the 1990s to 2010s were allocated to this place. $3.1 billion is what is believed in DHS expenditures from the Medicaid program. $2.47 billion composed the most significant portion of the DHS expenditures to this place. If I'm not pronouncing that word right, I'm saying it how I think it's spelled. So sorry, English doesn't always make sense. All right. So there's a lot going on here, and I think that it's super relevant getting into the next things that I've been researching in Utah, because Utah is also known for the troubled teen facilities, believe it or not. It's one of the first places people choose to send people. And also Utah is known as a place where people cannot leave unless their parents say they can. So Utah is the hub of America for troubled teen facilities. I'm not sure if Arkansas was at this time, but the torture that is documented in this place, this is me just going to say the bold parts here. You can read the rest. But sitting on children, pulling arms back, standing against a wall all day, straitjackets, isolation closets, and broken bones. That's the physical torture documented from this place. So one of the broken bones that's talked about in legal documents is a broken collarbone. And Jane Doe, this is the quote, Jane Doe 1 was in a church when he was physically restrained by a staff member until his shoulder and collarbone were broken. He was told this was because he allowed his eyes to wander during the service to a child. The next one's a lot. A forced marriage. Jane Doe 1 in another lawsuit was 16 when the abuse started. The complaint says she was forced to marry an unnamed counselor at the facility before she was able to escape and get a divorce. A 16-year-old was forced into a marriage at a facility with state funding. I don't know who is in charge of the state. Do you? There was religious coercion reported here with forced Bible study. So this is a quote. I'm going to read it from the news article. Do not put words into my mouth because I am just quoting what was said. Ivan, I hear you on that. Apparently, fraud is where these people are making their money. It's so bizarre. So, the former Lord's Ranch, patients saying Bible study in the federally founded facility was not voluntary, since the other option was to stand against a wall all day. So, you either went to study that Bible or you were standing on that wall all day. I wonder if someone in charge of the state was kind of obsessed with a wall around that time. Maybe that's why they were having someone stand at the wall. A little bit interesting. But I don't know how you could say any of this is allowed with state or federal funding. And then I think if you're going to be involved in this or be involved in all this scandal, you have no right at all to pass judgment on someone else that has a lot less violent fraud, less harm to children fraud going on. So, the people that are fraud in other areas too, I do believe are taken advantage of, because you can look at the history there, and I can dive into that if people want to eventually. But when you look at the geographical area and the GDP and all of those things with the foreign fraud that everyone was like, "Ooh, look over here." Okay. How'd they get here? The federal government is in charge of immigration. So, all right. So, when you look at the map and you look at how states connect, this is something I can go over as a whole of how a lot of these places work together or apart, or how operations work with transporting people, places, or things. But there's an interstate of operations like this. And these are quotes from people in news articles and different things. But there was a primary perpetrator, and Emily Alden Presley, the director of social services, habitually violated and assaulted minor male residents for over 10 years. There were a number of incidents of touching of private parts and orally assaulting people. And there was a systematic cover up. So you can read these quotes as you want. The words are changed a little bit so that it is something that's not inappropriate. When victims reported abuse to other staff, the leadership at Lord's Ranch either feigned concern while taking no action and allowing the abuse to continue, or threatened the victims with reprisals. So there's also a Baptist connection here. So this is Paul Pressler, and he's accused of decades of intimate violation with at least 6 other men coming forward alleging that they were abused or solicited for hanky-panky. I'm laughing because the way that Marsh put these words in here over my words that had the actual words. That's the only reason I'm laughing. I'm really sorry. Obviously, I care a lot about this. I'm actually shouting. My husband's probably going to wake up, and the dogs. I've lost my voice talking about this for the past few months. This is something I've always been my camera's about to move. Hold on. I'm not telling you guys to wait. I have to make my camera freeze. Okay. So, try to. At least 6 other men came forward alleging that they were abused or solicited for hanky-panky by Pressler in a string of incidents dating from 1978 to 2016. It's from the news. Co-led Southern Baptist, a conservative resurgence with Huckabee's support as the Baptist Convention president, is something that Paul Pressler was a part of. He co-led it with him. Paul Pressler, School of Law. So the school's trustee board included Family Research Council leader Tony Perkins. The school's dean. Does anyone know who the school's dean was? Let me make this bigger for you. The school's dean was Mike Johnson. Yes, that Mike Johnson that does not speak for all of us. So, who was elected later as the Speaker of the U.S. House. So, just letting you know, these people know each other. They go way back. There's a bunch of systemic releases throughout this, and I think that it's important to really focus on what the heck is going on here. So, James Maxwell deleted a pastor of the Church of God in Arkansas. Robert A. Arnold Jr. convicted of deleting his father-in-law. And there were a lot of other deleters released out here. So, quote, he was letting deleters out. The word deleters is replaced. He was letting intimate violators out. That is directly from a prosecutor in the state of Arkansas. Another quote, about 11 other cases of deleters who have gone free mentioned during the Huckabee presidential campaign. Quote, the personal connections pattern. So we have a Donald W. Clark who was convicted of theft, and the connection, quote, is Huckabee's pastor recommendation leniency for Clark, whose stepmother worked on Huckabee's staff, was interesting. Then there's Samuel W. Taylor, who had a prescription substance conviction. A prosecutor was quoted saying that the man told him Taylor's sister had gone to school with Huckabee. I don't know what that has to do with anything. If you're from a small town, you're from a small town. You all go to school together. Then there's Keith Richards, who is a Rolling Stone guitarist. For a 1975 traffic offense, Huckabee prepared the paperwork to clear the rock star's good name after he met him at a North Little Rock concert. That doesn't sound like anyone in a locker room with a trophy. David Hale, the Whitewater figure. So he was pardoned after being sentenced for 21 days in a state insurance case. Huckabee complained it would cost too much to hold him, and the price tag, $1,200. I'm so sorry. It was $1,200 to hold this man. $1,200 to hold this man. How many millions of dollars went to the Lord's Ranch when you were in charge of Arkansas, Mr. Huckabee? $1,200? Really? We can't afford $1,200 for someone committing fraud, for people committing worse fraud everywhere else. So the pattern you see here with these clemencies seems to be, and it's quoted saying by other people, a Christian clemency pattern. So, prosecutor, it seemed to be true, at least anecdotally, that if a minister is involved, Huckabee seems likely to grant clemency. I'm going to read that again, and then I'm going to say something. It seems to be true, at least anecdotally, that if a minister is involved, Huckabee seems likely to grant clemency. So, I want you to really think about that. We have a prosecutor saying that it seems to be true if Mike Huckabee is involved with a pastor getting clemency, that it is likely to be granted. My camera's moving again. There, it's going to move all over the place. I have one of those EMET cameras. Great. I'm saying talk to the hand because the face ain't listening. Okay, it's about to freeze. Mike Huckabee is out there being quoted by his prosecutors in his state, in his district, that have worked with him, for someone that served the longest as a person of his position in Arkansas at that time, to grant clemency, or be very likely to grant clemency if a pastor is involved. Where is Mike Huckabee at right now? Where is he representing the American people at right now? He's in a country that is founded ideologically, in part and intertwined with something he feels very convicted on religiously. And we have a prosecutor saying, this is from 2015, that it is probably true if there's a pastor involved, that guy is going to be granted some form of restitution, not restitution, but clemency by Huckabee. And he is now representing us in a country that has a lot of pastors going to it all the time, and a lot of religious values that make up its identity. And I think that that's a very clear, very concerning conflict of interest we have going on that no one wants to talk about. Then we have I just smashed those words together. You guys are going to learn that I read a lot in my head, but not out loud because I didn't have a lot of friends growing up. John Henry Claiborne was sentenced to 100 years for armed robbery. He was released because, quote, A pastor who promoted Huckabee among blacks urged the governor to grant clemency. I don't even know. I'm going to just let that sink in. I'm not going to have commentary on that one. So then we have Baptist pastor J. Cole's role in the Dumond case. J. Cole, Baptist pastor for the Mission Fellowship Bible Church in Fayetteville, who had championed Dumond's case for more than a decade on his radio show, was involved here. The state official is saying the problem with the governor is that he listens to J. Cole and reads Steve Dunleavy and believes him. All right. Also, when I hear the problem with the governor is that he listens to J. Cole, all I can think of is like the cool hip J. Cole that is a rapper. And I cannot picture Mike Huckabee listening to J. Cole. Obviously, he's talking about a different guy. Obviously, it's in the pattern and clemency and political outlet here, but I think it's really funny that J. Cole is mentioned and listening to him because he don't want to be saved. Sorry, I had to do that. I like that song. Okay. All right. And then we have a lot going on here with the victims and prosecutors. And you are looking at my face. Oopsies. So I'm freezing my camera again because it keeps moving. I don't know why it keeps doing that. Okay, I shouldn't have bought the one that moves because I need to stop talking with my hands. I'm gonna put my hands in a prison. Ashley Stevens Dumond is forced intimately as a victim, and her direct confrontation with Huckabee is one I quoted earlier about being face to face. Her assessment of Huckabee after the meeting is, this is a quote, he kept insisting that there was DNA evidence that had since exonerated Dumond, when that wasn't very much the case. When that very much wasn't the case. No matter that wasn't true. No matter that wasn't true. So interesting way to quote it. That's what the article was saying. And I think that that's also a very bizarre thing to say to a victim. That was in an interview with you on TV where you were probably trying to promote and help your PR. Didn't really help. Maybe Andrew Colvett was helping him. Other Dumond victims warned Huckabee as well. So there were letters about the forced intimacy obtained by the Huffington Post, and there's some quotes on here that you can read. And then prosecutors also warned Huckabee about what he was doing. So Mark Frazier argued Clemens was extremely likely to commit further acts of violence in the future and said for a teen to receive such a lengthy prison sentence without committing a deletion, you've got to be a bad little dude. Larry is quoted saying, "This is the day I've been dreading for a long time when this guy was released." So I'm going to keep going. There's a pretty clear timeline with all of this going on. So 1996, Huckabee is becoming governor. He immediately begins unprecedented clemency sprees. And it's quoted, during his years as governor, Huckabee granted this clemency an average of about once every 4 days. So that seems to be pretty accurate when I'm looking at this. It seems to be like between 3.5 to 4 on the once every 4 days thing. But it seems to be kind of an average based on the timeline. 1997, he's writing that letter to Wayne Dumond, or that's when the letter gets there, where he's quoted saying, "My desire is that you be released from prison." 1992, Wayne Dumond is released. Huckabee's desires, I guess, come true. He moves to Missouri. 2000, Maurice Clemens' sentence is commuted, and Carol Sue Shields is deleted by Dumond in Missouri. So 1 year later, after he's released, after Huckabee's desires are granted, he deletes another human being. 2001, Sarah, likely deleted by Dumond, is suspected, but passed away before the charges. 2003, Dumond is convicted of deletion and sentenced to life. He should have been sentenced to life the first time. 2005, he dies in prison. 2007, Huckabee leaves governorship having released over 1,000 criminals. In 2009, Maurice Clemens deletes 4 police officers. So, I see you, Charlie Gomax. So, Huckabee's religious authority positions. From 1989 to 1990, he is the Arkansas Baptist Convention president. And I read this quote earlier, but he was the only Baptist preacher around whom both sides rallied. I didn't know there were sides of preaching. Interesting. I think if you're talking about politically, but religiously a little bit weird. Formerly, the president of Arkansas State Baptist Convention, listed on the Network Steering Council as well. And then the Conservative Baptist Network Steering Council member. So he served alongside Tony Perkins and other conservative Southern Baptists. This is a little clip about biblical marriage and the Duggars from Mike Huckabee. I'm going to play this real quick. It's like 2 minutes long, and I drank a lot of water because I knew I was going to lose my voice shouting earlier. I have lost a little bit of my voice. So, going to hit play here and go potty.
Do you feel at all sheepish about the passage in your book where you said that the Duggar family was a model of everything that was good and decent about family, that they practiced love and respect for each other, and a model for the country?
Well, out of 19 kids, as far as we know, 18 turned out pretty darn well. Mm-hmm. So that's a pretty good percentage. And I don't think
I can just imagine that a lot of people who have felt disparaged by some of the things that you've said about gay rights, gay marriage, would think, hypocrite.
Look, I'm not going to defend anything of Josh. Nothing to defend. But I don't think you can disparage the entire family because one of the members did some pretty bad things.
Mm-hmm. Well, fair enough. And maybe the message that some people would draw is don't disparage anybody.
I don't think I have disparaged people, John. I mean, I feel like that I've held to a very consistent biblical standard of marriage. Mm-hmm. Again, I remind you, same standard of marriage that not only Barack Obama, but Hillary Clinton, Joe Biden,
John Edwards.
Yeah, they all had it. It's just that I still hold the same position that they held. They've changed their mind. They've gotten a lot of, right. I'm sure, very wonderful and generous donors as a result of it.
Hey YouTube fans, I'm Landon Dowdy from CNBC. Thanks so much for checking out our channel. Here you'll find videos packed with all the info that you need to be smarter about your finances. Be sure and subscribe by clicking right here and click on all the videos around me to see CNBC's.
Yes, as she said, subscribe, but to me. You can subscribe to her too. Just joking. I mean, yes, actually do. Sorry, I ran out to the bathroom and was getting back in as soon as that ended. So, moving on, I find that to be a little bit interesting, that the way that he's responding there, and then some decisions that he makes afterwards. This is actually in October of 2015 for full disclosure. So this is not at the beginning of the allegations. But that is a interesting way to look at it. I do agree with you. Huckabee will pardon your hands from prison. Are my hands in prison? Oh, my hands are in prison. I put them in prison. I was like, why are my hands in prison? What is going on? So, Southern Baptist Convention crisis. So, there's more than 400 Southern Baptist church leaders or volunteers charged with crimes since 2000. More than 400 Southern Baptist church leaders or volunteers are charged with crimes since 2000. Those are just not any crime you'll see on the screen. Ongoing Department of Justice investigations, not in vegetables. I was about to say in vegetables. Into the Southern Baptist Convention handling of these abuse cases and complaints, because more than 400 have came forward since the start of 2000, and I think they're looking at how have these complaints only gotten to this point at this point. I think a lot of us are thinking that. This is something that I think I really needed to include. It's a little bit irrelevant, but I think that it's really interesting when you hear the way that he talks about ICE raids, because I feel like someone that seems to be pretty radical about certain things was once not very radical about most things.
We had a similar situation in Arkansas at one of our poultry plants, and I was outraged that there were parents taken during the raid, and actually infants, some less than a year old, were left without a parent. And the local authorities, including our human services people, were not notified and not given an opportunity. That's not what we are as a country. Now, should we enforce the law? Yes. But you don't put children at risk, and you don't act in such a way that really defies what makes us unique as a civilization, and that is our elevation and celebration of human life and our respect and dignity of it. As a pro-life person, because I'm pro-life, I believe that extends beyond the gestation period. And I cannot claim that I'm pro-life and believe that a child begins at conception and then say that his life ends at the birth canal. So what troubled me about the one in Arkansas, I'm not as familiar with the one in Iowa because I wasn't here, but I was very vocal and made some rather bold public comments about it. If we're going to enforce the law, that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. But you should notify the local sheriff and the local human services people and make sure that we've accommodated infants and children. That'd be, to me, an inexcusable and not a very American thing to do, to ignore that. And certainly as both a Christian and as a person who believes that the way we treat humanity is the ultimate measure by which we are ourselves judged, there's some improvements to be made there.
Are those raids the most effective way to enforce the law?
No, I'll go back to my beginning point. Until you seal the border, there's really no other way to start. That's the starting point.
All right. So I have a lot of things to say about that. I'm going to be very careful about the way that I say them. He is saying that he did not like how people were treated in an ICE raid in America back in 2007. Or around that time, before that time, because he's speaking about it specifically in 2007, reflecting on how the actions were taken. He is talking about being disgusted that children were taken away from their parents or that they didn't have things they needed. And I want to bring a thought into your head where you can come to your own conclusion that he's talking about sealing the border and that being the first step. And I think that the border is sealed pretty well in an area that he represents America in now. And the aid that was supposed to get into that very sealed border was American aid, he talks about in another clip, that did not allow formula into those areas for some time. So he really cares about people getting what they need as long as it's in America and it's not in America representing another place. Where people are Christians and some of the oldest Christians in the world, actually, that spread Christianity to the world in the land of Jesus Christ. Apparently, those people don't count with what he's saying in 2007 here, or when this video is published. But I find that to be super disgusting to talk about caring about children not stopping at the womb and then caring a lot more about the predators that are hurting children in your state with a clear pattern of that. And then going across the world and also not really caring about those children either, only caring about one side of those children. I mean, I am baffled that you could claim to do that in the name of God and our Creator who created all of these children, who created all of us. I am baffled that you could sit there and try to say with your conservative values that you believe that. Because I don't know if you're actually just not thinking or if you're actually that manipulated. I don't know why I said that weird, but I mean, yeah, but the people in his state, I don't think he really cared about the victims in his state about certain things either, as you'll see this timeline on him here. Very sorry, I'm getting a little bit frustrated with him on this, even now, even though I already knew this. All right, so 1996 to 2007, Huckabee is governor. So Huckabee becomes the Arkansas governor after Tucker's Whitewater conviction in 1996. Do we think this is why he's so obsessed with Tucker? Who knows? Who knows? Huckabee appoints Ted Schul to the Arkansas Child Welfare Agency Review Board in 2000. That's the same Ted Schul from the ranch, by the way. This is the board responsible for licensing child care facilities, including his own Lord's Ranch. That's from the news. So this is creating an ultimate conflict of interest, which he also has a conflict of interest representing us on now, as the facility owner is now regulating his own facility. Who do all those complaints go to? I don't know. You ask yourself that same question. 2002 to 2003 is when the height of the Duggar Up cover happens with the charges or the initial allegations within the family and with a babysitter. And you can see Huckabee is governor from 1996 to 2007. This is happening from 2002 to 2003. So March 2002, Josh Duggar at 14 confesses to his father, Jim Bob, that he blank his sisters. March 2002. All right. So 2002, Jim Bob Duggar did not take any action after his first confession, and that is from a news article. 2002 continued. This was followed by at least 6 more incidents of Josh doing this to his sister and his friends, including one that he touched, a 5-year-old sister. March 2003, after meeting with church elders, Josh finally was sent to a treatment program 1 full year after confession. I will say here, full disclosure, there's a lot of back and forth in the reporting that he was actually not sent to a treatment program. It was, you could call it a treatment program, but he was actually sent away to a camp, essentially, to not like the Lord's Ranch. I think it was a little bit different, but who knows? July 2003, Jim Bob takes Josh to meet Arkansas State Trooper Joseph Hutchins, who gives him a very stern talk, but takes no official action. All right, so the legal consequence here, and this is a quote from an article, don't put these words into my mouth. Jim Bob and Michelle could have faced 6 years in prison for permitting abuse of a minor, but the statute of limitations had ran out by the time it was reported in 2006. All right, so 2004. Huckabee is reappointing a child abuser. So Huckabee reappoints Ted Schul to the Child Welfare Agency Review Board despite years of these abuse reports. That's what the news is saying. Again, full disclosure, words not out of my mouth, but I will say it's interesting to see because Ted Schul was in charge of the review board. Was Mike Huckabee aware of these reports? Yes or no? And there's a certain point when it becomes impossible for him to not be aware of this, just so you know. So 2006, he has to be aware of everything at this point. And I'm not saying that. I'm saying that based on the review of financial and everything else. So the expenditures totaled $3.1 billion with a total of $2.78 billion in direct program expenditures. And those Medicaid programs totaled to $2.47 billion from this as well. Oopsies. Sorry. All right. So, spring 2006. June, that's kind of summer. That's summer. Summer, spring. We're going to go with it. June of 2006, Rep. Buddy Blair convenes legislative hearings about the Lord's Ranch. Quote, recipient of $8.5 million annually in Medicaid money from Huckabee's DHS, from the news article. There are documented torture complaints talked about now. In quote, staff punish children by sitting on them, putting their arms behind, or making them stand against a wall all day. Another quote, students being forced into straitjackets, and other physical restraints for bad behavior. I really think about that when I think about some of the people that have been in these facilities and what they say happened to them. And I think about the fact that, was it always bad behavior, or was it behavior of saying enough is enough? All right, May 2006. I put this backwards. Anyways, there's the intimate assault allegations. So DHS receives allegations by an Alaskan youth individual that he'd been assaulted at the ranch and that he had been taunted as gay afterward. All right, so 2006, what's his response? What does Mike Huckabee have to say about this? Mike Huckabee has a little bit to say about this. And this is what the news is saying, by the way. Quote, when Huckabee was exploring a presidential run in 2006, Shul, end quote for a second. This is Shul from the Lord's Ranch. Back to the quote. Gave Huckabee, his wife and daughter, current Arkansas Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders, a private plane ride to a Republican Party event in North Carolina. All right, this is 2006, guys. This is the year that he knows about those allegations from this court hearing. He has taken a private plane with these people. The reason I think people found out about this, and this is another quote, they had an emergency landing. So the Arkansas Times reported then Governor Mike Huckabee and his daughter, future Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders, were passengers on Sewell's plane when it had to land in an emergency. December 2006. This is when the Duggar investigation is blown wide open. December 7th. The Oprah Winfrey Show cancels the Duggar family's appearance after receiving a tip about Josh Duggar's allegations. December 2006, authorities interview some of the alleged minor victims who tell police that Josh had touched them in certain areas, in 2 different areas. I almost tried to say those numbers out loud, Marsh. All right, 1996 to 2007. Moving on, 2007, the final year. January of 2007, Mike Huckabee is leaving office as Arkansas governor. Why? We'll see. 2007. These are also quotes from this year. The Arkansas Child Welfare Board, of which Saul was a member, defeated a proposal by state lawmaker to make the board independent of the facilities it regulated. So again, Saul, who was still a member and defeated a proposal with state lawmakers, the guy in charge of the Lord Ranch, is sitting here messing stuff up and trying to make it worse. 2007 State Trooper Joseph Hutchins is convicted of child images and is currently serving a what am I trying to say right now? Redo. Let me rewind. 2007 State Trooper Joseph Hutchins is convicted on child image charges, and he is currently serving a 56-year prison sentence. All right. Joseph Hutchins is the police officer that is interviewing Josh Duggar for the first interview where he has a stern talk with him. So the guy that is interviewing the Duggar son about those things that were very serious is a few years later convicted on child image charges and sentenced to prison. All right, so these are the Duggars, and I got a lot to say about these people. I also was really fascinated by this family. So my camera's getting ready to move again. Hold on. Talk to the hand. Oh, no. Okay. So you can see here, this is Michelle right here, the mom. This is, I think this is actually Josh right here. This is the dad. Do you guys know who this is right here? Can you guys see who that is? It's Mike Huckabee. It is the side of Mike Huckabee's head. All right. So this is a clip, and this is about why Anna Duggar can't leave. And this is throughout the next parts of this as I wrap this all up and talk about thoughts, comments, concerns, complaints, which I'm complaining to myself, and all of you watching. I'm complaining to myself that this is even allowed to continue or go on, and that multiple people have failed people a lot. This is why Anna Duggar can't leave Josh, and this is from Shiny Happy People, which is a documentary show that came out, and it's a really great watch. So I'm gonna hit play here. All right, so also, I don't know if you guys could hear me, but I was eating some Pringles, and I'm gonna be embarrassed if you guys could hear me munching on this. Why is Josh Duggar relevant here? Well, Josh Duggar was involved in politics, and we're talking about a politician here. Pastor, politician, talk show host, then politician representative again. So, when we're talking about Josh Duggar, he has this timeline that's something we kind of touched on, but just so that you have a visual here, from 2002 to 2003, that's when those allegations are going on and those things are being interviewed that he admits to, by the way. 2006, the police investigation opens and the victims are interviewed, his sisters and his babysitter. 2007, Huckabee leaves Arkansas governorship knowing about the investigation. 2008, Josh Duggar, the same Josh Duggar in that investigation in 2006, where Mike Huckabee is aware of what's going on, the allegations, all of that stuff. Mike Huckabee has Josh Duggar work on a Huckabee campaign that helped drive Huckabee to an Iowa victory. So, he knew about the allegations, and then there's a quote from CNN. In 2008, they helped drive Huckabee to win the Iowa caucuses. He called the Duggars at this time, this is a quote, an example of something wholesome and wonderful. Again, Mike Huckabee is saying the Duggars at this time, example of something wholesome and wonderful. He used a known child offender, not registered at that time, I don't believe, as key campaign asset for evangelical voting. All right. So this is just a screen grab of one of the articles about that retired trooper serving 56 years for images. This is the same trooper that interviewed Josh Duggar, who was working on the Huckabee political campaign. This is a very famous sister who was one of the victims, and she's going to open up about how their story came out, why she came out and said what she said, because she felt like she needed to save her family, and she was one of the only ones that could do it. And yeah, I'm just going to let it speak for itself.
For as long as I can remember, there was this sense of bewilderment with people looking at our family and just seeing all of us lined up in red dresses, you know, out at wherever, and are they all yours?
We're the Duggars.
Jill Duggar Dillard, nicknamed Sweet Dilly Muffin by her family, lived a seemingly idyllic life as the fourth child of Jim Bob and Michelle Duggar, stars of the hit TLC reality series 19 Kids and Counting.
Okay, everybody, it is time for breakfast.
The conservative Christian and ever-expanding family, a source of fascination for their strict rules on modest dressing, homeschooling, and courting. But now, Jill and her husband, Derek Dillard, say that wholesome veneer masked a damaging culture of control.
Even if you're an adult, even if you've been an adult for a long time, you're married with kids, if your parents don't give their blessing, then you're not honoring them.
And the family becoming embroiled in scandal.
What's it like to know that your parents were protecting your abuser?
The couple now discussing what they say cameras didn't capture in their book, Counting the Cost.
What were the costs in the way that you took account of them?
Biggest one is relationships, closeness in relationships with my family. That's been one of the biggest costs.
Millions of fans watched as Jill grew from a teen on 19 Kids and Counting to a wife and mom, starring in a namesake show, Jill and Jessa Counting On, appearing on multiple covers of People magazine. Jill's courtship with her now husband Derek was a central plot line in the family's reality show, the couple following strict dating rules, having chaperones, limited touching, and no kissing.
You had courtship rules. What struck you as odd, if any of it?
It was unusual. I wasn't used to being 25 and having to have someone with me at all times.
Derek dipped me for my kiss.
Their very first kiss was on their wedding day, a ratings bonanza with TLC's cameras rolling.
What was that like, being told your wedding is going to be on TV?
I was very much conditioned to it by then.
But the night before their wedding, the couple say Jim Bob surprised his 23-year-old daughter with the signature page of this contract, which committed her to years of filming, and she says she unwittingly signed. You write in the book that you felt that your father, quote, tricked you into signing a contract the night before your wedding.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do. I feel like I was tricked into it.
Derek, you're a lawyer. You referred to this contract as a fraud.
I think the biggest thing was it was a contract we wouldn't have agreed to based on the terms that were given.
The 2014 contract detailing payments to the family, starting at $50,000 per half-hour episode and $65,000 for hour-long specials. Jill says the money was controlled by her father. The idea that you weren't paid and yet your wedding attracted 4.4 million viewers, you were in many ways the stars of the show.
Yeah, even the show soon after that was named Jill and Jessa Counting On, and we still weren't seeing income even at that point.
Jill filmed over 200 episodes and 24 specials with her family, but she says she never received a paycheck until she and Derek confronted Jim Bob about it.
You write openly you got a check for $175,000, but in many ways, the revenue you generated, one could argue, was considerably more than that.
Yes.
Jim Bob and Michelle Duggar, devoted followers of the Institute in Basic Life Principles, a fundamentalist Christian order that promotes strict purity and control in gender roles, where the family must obey the father.
We believe in honoring our parents. We're Christians, but we don't believe honoring is the same as obedience.
The Institute organizing family conferences like this one in Big Sandy, Texas, reinforcing their faith and values. Nightline was there in 2011. So were the Duggars.
Long time no see.
At the time, the eldest Duggar child, Josh, had been married for 3 years.
There's many different definitions of courtship, but for us, it meant really choosing purity, choosing to wait for a lot of things that people would take for granted. So our first kiss was on our wedding day.
Just 4 years later, Josh acknowledged he molested 5 girls when he was just 14, including 4 of his sisters. Jill says she told authorities about the abuse. Josh never faced charges. 19 Kids and Counting, the show that made the family a fortune, was canceled after the shocking headlines came to light. Tasked with damage control, Jill says she and her sister Jessa felt they had to give an interview to Fox News to protect the family brand.
It was like, okay, we need you to fall in line here and do these interviews for the show, go here, do this thing and that thing to kind of rally the troops and get it back together.
Jess and I were talking, we're like, oh my goodness, most of the stuff out there is lies. It's not truth.
Mm-hmm.
And so for truth's sake, we want to come out and set the record straight.
I was surprised to read that Josh was in the room.
Yeah.
Off camera.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What do you see in that 24-year-old girl who's talking?
I didn't want to be there. I wanted to help my parents, and I felt like I was the only one who could do this. I was the only one who could fill that role.
TLC kept the lucrative Duggar franchise going without Josh, launching that new series called Jill and Jessa Counting On. But Derek and Jill say they wanted to start their own lives, free from the television cameras.
When we weren't complying with the Jill and Jessa script, it was threatened to us, do you all want to come home and everyone to know that this show is canceled because of you?
Jill also says small acts of independence, such as wearing pants and getting a nose ring, were met with hostility.
Anyone who is making decisions for themselves that the parents don't give their blessing, that's seen as rebellious.
Eventually, the couple stopped filming altogether, breaking with the family.
Watching the way that my parents kind of protected my brother, but then used me and some of my sisters, it was hard, and it's still hard to swallow. There's one point where I call my dad out about it, and I just say, you treat me worse than you treat my brother, my pedophile brother.
That's got to be painful.
It is.
In 2021, Josh was convicted of receiving child pornography and is now serving 12 and a half years in prison. Derek attended court every day.
What was the kaleidoscope of emotions?
There was a lot of surprise, anger, just bewilderment and disbelief that people could believe that this didn't happen, because to me, the evidence was so clear.
You, in the book, call Josh a monster. and say that you wanted him to be put away for a very long time. Do you feel like you'll ever reach out to your brother?
I have one time, just because I didn't know what to do. So I sent like a handmade Christmas card to him, but then it got sent back. I don't think I'm on his list.
In a statement to ABC News, Jim Bob and Michelle Duggar said, "We aim to deal honorably with our children, our finances, and our endeavors. While imperfect, it is our intent and desire to live a life that honors Christ. We do not believe the best way to resolve conflicts, facilitate forgiveness and reconciliation, or to communicate through difficulties is through the media or in a public forum, so we will not comment further." The couple say today the relationship with Jill's parents is still strained. How often do you interact with your dad, especially, but with your family in general?
Like I'll see my mom at sister get-togethers for brunch or birthdays, stuff like that. My dad's relationship's a little more complicated.
But is it fair to say you're estranged?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure. There's like tension there that we recognize.
I think besides weddings and funerals, that was the only time that I'd seen him after Freddie was born in the last 5 years, probably.
Freddie, youngest of Jill and Derek's 3 boys, was born last year. The couple hopes to raise their family and live on their own terms.
I would definitely say that trying to disentangle what I've been taught growing up and everything, it's a journey, and you need to give yourself grace, recognize what you can have those positive and negative experiences. They can coexist. You can have both.
Our thanks to Juju. Jill Duggar Dillard's book is out now.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And
all right. So thank you. I see a few more of you are here. Sorry if you're up late watching this. You can always watch it later if it's getting a little bit late. But this is something that I really wanted to get out there because I feel like a lot of people were not aware of some of this. But also keep in mind here when you're talking about the contract and you're talking about the Duggars and labor laws, especially from someone that worked in politics who was a parent, those children aren't protected by a lot of laws. And contracts, yes, are sometimes different than a minimum wage. However, when you're talking about a child, child labor laws are very important and very strict in America. So, not to be God's advocate here or anything, but I really hope that those Duggar girls are aware that even just by Arkansas standard, which I know some of them move, Arkansas, I'm going to keep saying that. By the Arkansas standard, I'm reading the child labor laws regulate the employment of minors. That's the same in every state. I remember having to get a work permit for my first job, particularly in the entertainment industry, requiring permits and parental consent for those under the age of 16. Well, most of them were filmed from infancy after a certain point. And the minimum wage in Arkansas is set at $11 per hour. And employees must comply with both state and federal labor laws regarding minor working hours and conditions. So I do think there's some wiggle room here when you talk about contracts. But when you talk about labor laws and then you take the wages from those children, I'm pretty sure that's a gray area somebody's playing with there. But that is totally fine. Thank you guys for coming, Allie, Files Research Team, and Allie. That's totally fine. I went late, so that is fine. I'm grateful that you guys even came. Okay, so this is Mike Huckabee and Josh Duggar. Take that in. This is Mike Huckabee and Josh Duggar. So that is Mike Huckabee and Josh Duggar after, presumably, 2006 and 2007. So this is after Josh is interviewed by that police officer, sheriff, whatever you want to call him, law enforcement agent. So this is Anna Duggar and Josh Duggar with Mrs. Huckabee. All right, so 2013, this is going over Josh's Washington career. So Josh was allowed to go to Washington the capital of America, and work in the political circles. So in 2013, he was at the Research Council appointment, Family Research Council appointment. June 2013, Tony Perkins hired Josh Duggar as the executive director of FRC Action. In February of 2013, this is quoted, Josh created an account on Ashley Madison's platform. I'm sure a lot of you know about this or what Ashley Madison is just from this scandal alone. It is a platform for adultery. 2015, the year a lot of this unraveled. So May 21st, 2015, that scandal broke virally. So Oprah was aware and everything else, but I do remember in 2015 when this broke, and I was very surprised, very, very surprised that they allowed the show to go on after the initial allegations. Looking back at this now. So the scandal breaks. Here's a quote. In Touch Weekly obtained a redacted police report that Josh Duggar resigned his position at the okay. So the In Touch Weekly obtained a redacted police report, and end quote. That was about those allegations in the police interview and everything back in Arkansas. Josh Duggar resigned his position at the FRC action that same day. So also it was a big scandal because it was illegal for them to obtain a redacted police report. They were minors. May 22nd, 2015, Huckabee has an immediate defense of these of this family. And they're family friends, so I guess that makes sense. But he picked an interesting side of this fence. Quote, Josh's actions when he was an underage teen are as he described them himself, inexcusable. But that doesn't mean unforgivable. From Mike Huckabee. All right. And then Mike Huckabee accused other people of this phrase, insensitive bloodthirst, about these allegations. So I also want you to take that little nugget of information into your mind and really think about. He is talking about these acts being inexcusable and him being an underage teen. So basically, he's making Josh almost look like a victim here because he was an underage teen when he has this behavior he's doing to other underage teens who are not participating in this behavior. And I just feel like that's a really weird way to put that. August 2015, his adultery scandal gets out too. So, quote, Duggar admitted to being unfaithful to his wife after a reporter came out alleging that Duggar was a member of Ashley Madison. That gets a little bit more weird later, and there's allegations of him with a sex worker. This is a picture of Jim Bob here on the left, Josh Duggar in the middle as a young boy, and Mike Huckabee over there on the right. I'm just going to let that fester in your mind. All right, this is Mike Huckabee again on the right. I just look at him. Just look at that man. Just look at him. All right, he's defending Josh Duggar, and these are some other quotes that he has. All right. So the quote I just went over was the inexcusable one, but here's another one. Good people make mistakes and do regrettable and even disgusting things. The reason that the law protects disclosure of many actions on the part of a minor is that the society has traditionally understood something that is today's bloodthirsty media that today's bloodthirsty media does not understand. That's about Josh Duggar, and that's Mike Huckabee saying that. Another quote. Those who have enjoyed revealing this long ago sins in order to discredit the Duggar family have actually revealed their own insensitive bloodthirsts. Not really sure how the truth is insensitive, but biblically that's just not true. Some campaigns I'll go over. This is before, but it's kind of in between because he's running before and after. The way the elections work are really weird in America. This is Mike Huckabee comparing gay marriage to drinking and swearing.
You do write very eloquently about it being a religious conviction to oppose gay marriage, but then you also talk about the biblical backings of being heterosexual. So given that, how do you kind of square that religious conviction with being open to having gay friends?
Well, people can be my friends who have lifestyles that are not necessarily my lifestyles. I don't shut people out of my circle or out of my life because they have a different point of view. I don't drink alcohol, but gosh, a lot of my friends, maybe most of them do. I don't use profanity, but believe me, I've got a lot of friends who do. Some people really like classical music and ballet and opera. It's not my cup of tea. I'd like to think that there's room in America for people who have different points of view without screaming, shouting, and wanting to shut their businesses down. What worries me in this new environment we're in, it's not just that someone might disagree. They don't want to argue with me, even take a different point of view. They want to close someone's business down, put them really in an economic position of disenfranchisement. I find that very, very disturbing.
Governor, you talked about gay marriage. So let's talk about that and how much your own party has changed even since you ran in 2008. According to Pew, in 2008, 19% of Republicans supported gay marriage. Now it's all the way up to 30%. That's a pretty big jump in not a lot of years. So you talk about the Big Ten in the Republican Party. Shouldn't there be room for those who want same-sex marriage to be the law of the land?
Sure, there's room in the tent. I hope the party doesn't change its overall view. But, the very fact that I talk about the relationships I have with friends who are gay indicate that I'm not a person who shuts everybody out around me who disagrees. Be honest with you, Dana, I find a lot more interesting conversations that I can have with people who don't agree with me. And I accept a lot of people as friends, maybe whose lifestyle I don't necessarily adhere to, agree with, or practice. Doesn't mean that I can't have a good relationship with anyone or lead them or govern them. But for me, as it was for President Obama in 2008, this is not just a political issue. It is a biblical issue. And as a biblical issue, unless I get a new version of the scriptures, it's really not my place to say, okay, I'm just going to evolve. It's like asking somebody who's Jewish to start serving bacon-wrapped shrimp in their deli. We don't want to do that. I mean, we're not going to do that. Or asking a Muslim to serve up something that is offensive to him, or to have dogs in his backyard. We're so sensitive to make sure we don't offend certain religions, but then we act like Christians can't have the convictions that they've had for over 2,000 years.
I think that's a really interesting way to hear him compare and be so de-radical in his speech and rhetoric with that, and also comparing marriage, gay marriage, to drinking and swearing, when the Constitution and the Bill of Rights don't care about your feelings. So law is law, and you can't interpret it in that way where you manipulate it to your own religious ideology and beliefs. Yes, the founding fathers were predominantly of Christian following or under the Christian umbrella, but they were people that were both, a lot of them under the Christian umbrella, that also were very heavy and strong people within enlightenment. And I think that you have to have both of those things to strongly and without an iron fist be the powerhouse that we're supposed to be. So then this guy runs for president. All right. So he is all around all these people. There's all this fraud going on. He's wilding out over here in Arkansas. Someone probably needed to whoop his ass. Probably shouldn't have said that. But all right. So 2016, this is his second run for presidency. The Duggar endorsements and support. So, Jim, Bob, and Michelle are featured on his campaign homepage. There's photos of the Duggars' parents and their endorsements of Huckabee for president all over his campaign website. And that's that. I didn't quote that exactly, but that's from some research. Josh meets with Huckabee in DC in May of 2015. And there's a tweet. Great visit with my friend at Governor Mike Huckabee from Josh. All right. So May 2015, that scandal is breaking. And Huckabee immediately defends him. He's also meeting with Mike Huckabee that same month. Good people make mistakes and do regrettable and even disgusting things. That's a quote that's going on here. Those who have enjoyed revealing this have revealed their own insensitive bloodthirst. There that is again. There that guilt is again. June 2015. All right, that's 2 months. 2 months after the scandal breaks, just so you know. May the scandal breaks, June 2015. The Duggars are quietly removed from the endorsements website. So, interesting. Around the same time. So, after the Duggars are removed from the website, we have some interesting comments said by Mike Huckabee.
Governor Mike Huckabee joins us now. Governor, good to see you. Good morning.
Thank you, Matt. Great to be here.
It seems to me the irony here is you're taking a pro-Israel stance, but in explaining that stance, you have offended people in Israel and Jews all around the world.
Hardly.
Hardly. Yeah. The Israeli ambassador to the United States calls your words inappropriate. Some fellow Republicans have called them offensive and outrageous, and the Anti-Defamation League spokesperson called them completely out of line and unacceptable, and you're not backing down an inch.
Not at all. In fact, the response from Jewish people has been overwhelmingly positive. The response from Holocaust survivors, from the children of Holocaust survivors. I was last night in an event. I was probably one of 4 Gentiles in the entire event. It was a Jewish event. People were overwhelmingly supportive.
But
and
we're
Matt, here's
hearing
why.
from people who are saying
you're
just
hearing
the
from
opposite.
The left. You're hearing from the ADL. You're hearing from the Democrats.
We're hearing from people who, by the way, like you, oppose the Iran nuclear deal.
Well, and some of them just need to go back and read what the Iranians themselves said. They said, we have developed the missiles that will replace Israel with a big Holocaust. That's their words.
But that's their words.
Yes,
Why
it is.
would a presidential candidate echo those words? Let me ask you this. If you're elected president and you are the one negotiating with the Iranians in the future, would you stand in the Oval Office and address the American people and say, my fellow Americans, I'm rejecting the Iranian deal because it will march the Israelis to the door of the oven? Would you say that as president of the United
Matt,
States?
here's exactly what I would say. I would say we don't trust people who have threatened to kill Israel, threatened to wipe them off the map, who have said that they are glad that they're congregated in Israel
Governor,
because it makes it an easy target and that they are a one-bomb country.
As president of the United States, would you use the words march the Israelis to the door of the oven?
Yes, I would. And let me tell you why. Because I have been to Auschwitz 3 times. I have stood at that very place. I've been to Israel dozens of times. My first trip there was 42 years ago. The one thing I am absolutely assured of is that for 6,000 years, Jews have been hunted down. And the last time the world did not take seriously threats against the Jewish people, just before World War II, this ended up in the murder of 6 million
But as
Jews.
president of the United States, you would use words to express your policy and your views on Israel, even if they offended millions of Jews around the world.
Matt, we need to use strong words when people make strong threats against an entire group of people, as the Iranians have made toward the Jews. This is not empty talk on the part of the Iranians. This is something that they consistently say, even as we're sitting down having a negotiation with them, and they're crying out death to America. My gosh, what kind of negotiation is that?
Answer the critics, Governor, who say that you and some other Republican candidates are doing and saying anything right now simply to be heard over the roar of Donald Trump. Is there some truth to that?
No, there's not, and I'll tell you why. If I was going to make noise about this, don't you think I'd have a better forum than a weekend satellite radio show that I didn't think that many people would even be listening to?
Well,
I
you
wasn't
say
the one
it
who
there
blew it
and you
up.
end up here.
Because you invited me.
Sure,
And
because
I'm
of the
gonna say it,
comments.
but I will continue to say it. And by the way, it's nothing that I haven't said for the past 42 years, having been in and out of Israel and having been a strong believer that the reason that the Holocaust happened was because so many people naively believed Neville Chamberlain's ridiculous statement that we're going to bring peace in our time. And we ended up seeing 11 million people murdered, 6 of whom were Jews who were marched to those very ovens that I've stood in front of.
In about a week, there's going to be the first debate on the Republican side. It appears, based on polling numbers, that you'll be on that stage, along with the frontrunner, Donald Trump. Do you think it's time for you and other Republicans to stop treating him as some kind of a sideshow and start treating him as a real candidate and ask him his views, his policies, and his vision for the future of this country?
Well, I've never treated him as a sideshow. I mean, anybody who's got $10 billion is a player in a election because he can afford to make things happen. And, you know, he's striking a nerve with a lot of people. But my job is not to react to Donald Trump. My gosh, he's getting all the attention he needs without my help. My job is to focus on what I stand for, talk about how to get jobs back in this country, talk about how to keep America safe, and how to return to our basic moral conscience as a country. And those are the issues that I'll be focusing on. I'll swim in my lane. I'll let Donald Trump swim in his.
Governor, it's always good to have you here.
Thank you, Matt.
Thanks
Great to be
very
with you
much.
guys.
It's a pleasure.
Hello, Today fans. Thanks for checking out our YouTube channel.
All right. So I found that to be really interesting because he seems to, I think a lot of politicians do this. They're the opposition at that time of the, during the election. But here we go. Here's a Mike Huckabee. My camera is moving again. I don't know what's going on with that. It's like, oh. Marsh moved my thing as I'm trying to make it stop. All right. So this is the Huckabee sticker that I just kind of put all over here over and over because it wouldn't fit just in the PowerPoint background for my pupils in the classroom tonight. I also have some screenshots of the Mike Huckabee election website on the Wayback Machine. You can run, you can hide. Black Diamond can still run your website as you're an ambassador, but let me tell you, that archive is all up in there, archiving the stuff. So one of the few icons on his website is talking about how Israel's our only friend and ally. And this is straight from Mike Huckabee's election website in 2016. He's talking about, and this is in quote, in a world of uncertainty, evil, and moral insanity, Israel is shining light of moral clarity. The enemies of Israel are the enemies of America. Sadly, this administration spends more time berating Israel for building houses and lands given to Abraham than telling the Iranians to stop building bombs pointed at us. Interesting, because God did not give those lands to Abraham. He gave those lands to the descendants of the Levant at that time. Anyone living in the Levant that descended from Abraham, not to Abraham, because guess what? People die. So, as president, had to get comfortable. So as president, he says that he will stand with the Jewish people in our shared fight against radical Islam. Just so you know, those two terms together, oxymoron. You actually cannot practice Islam and be radical. Read the Quran. It's actually very similar to I think you can take some things out of context. You can take the Old Testament out of context. So you can take any religious book out of context. You also have to remember time was different then. People didn't live as long. All three of the Abrahamic religions, or the religions that descended from Abraham, Islam, Jewish faith, and Christianity, all three have young children in those books. So just take that in. Don't let anyone try to make you emotional about one side or the other. All three of them have it in there. Look up the age of Mary and Joseph. All right, so he's going to do that. He's going to support a unified Jerusalem. And he's also going to confront and stop Iran. So I'm sorry I'm laughing, but I feel like that is his only focus right now. He's confronting and stopping Iran and not really caring about what's best for America in some of these ways. So the administration's willingness to trust Iran and undermine Israel is unprecedented and wrong. So he's not biased at all supporting us over there. Support Israel in the fight for peace, religious freedom, and human rights. That's what he's doing. Human rights over there, like baby formula. All right. As governor, this one's about his record. This is straight off of the Wayback Machine. I'm going up on the way back. As governor, he protected the rights of parents to homeschool their children. It's keeping those children at home so that people are not tattling. Appointed a former homeschooling parent to the State Board of Education. I hope that was no one from the Lord's Ranch. And he signed much improved charter school bill, resulting in the creation of Arkansas's first ever charter schools. I'm laughing because it's so funny reading that out loud now, looking back at all of it. Like, this is actually something that I would, with that history as a PR person, not PR, But as a PR person, I would look at this and I would say, absolutely not. You're not saying any of that. We're going to go with something else. How many trees did you plant? How many trees did you plant? How much did you cut in this budget over here? He issued a homeschool day proclamation and his values. So you will not find a stronger champion in the sanctity of human life, traditional marriage, and family values we hold dear. Not sure who he means by we. He is the only one running. As governor, I fought for life, family, marriage, and religious liberty. The school he was helping fund with state and federal dollars punished children for not wanting to go to groups or, services. So I don't know if he really did that. Passed a ban on partial birth abortions, signed a statewide marriage protection bill into law, and passed a law requiring internet filters in public schools. That's interesting that Josh Duggar was helping him on this campaign. Also signed a statewide marriage proclamation bill into law, but someone from that Lord's Ranch was forced to get married as a child. So may have been the age of consent, still a child. If 18 is a child or an adult and they're 16, they're a freaking child. All right, so the economy and wages, the average family income increased by over 50% when he was there. Is that because a lot of them were working at the Lord's Ranch? Who knows? He cut welfare rolls by almost 50%. I don't believe some of that looking at some of this other stuff. Maybe that's a statistic somehow, some way, but I mean, he's saying it, but I want to see the numbers. Law and order. So law and order has always been one of his top priorities. Does he mean clemency and pardons? The two people in this country he values most are soldiers and police officers. I can't even expand on that without laughing more because, in quote, they're the only thing standing between our freedom and total anarchy. Well, when predators are running rampant, that's freedom for somebody, I guess. My record on law and order as governor includes a 20% drop in murders. Interesting with his pardons, carrying out 16 executions, but let people that executed others out of prison. Denying over 85% of all commutation reports and cracking down on methamphetamine labs, child abuse, and domestic battery. So this man is cracking down on child abuse in his 2016 election campaign website, and he has Josh Duggar helping him on this campaign. All right, take that in. It says cracking down on methamphetamine labs, child abuse, and domestic battery, and Josh Duggar, who assaulted his sisters and is caught with other stuff, is helping him with this campaign or the caucus to get here. And he says he's cracking down on that child abuse. I'm sure he really is. He believes in education, that it's a family function, not a federal function. I'm wondering why the federal government was assisting in some of those educational facilities then. And he has a strong record of supporting local control over education, starting in the household. Taxes and spending. He's the first governor of Arkansas to pass a broadband tax cut in the history of the state. And he doubled the standard deduction for individuals and married couples, doubled the child care tax credit, and eliminated marriage penalty. He eliminated the capital gains tax on the sale of a home. I do think that's a good one. He eliminated the state income tax for families below the poverty line. I don't know how some of this is possible with the other cuts, just being honest with you. No, this is what he wants. No, this is what he says he's doing. This is his record. This is his record, not what he's going to do. I don't think this is possible with some of the other things in the funding, but whatever. Reduce the capital gains tax for businesses and individuals. I mean, that's nice, but you still have the federal. Index the income tax to protect people from paying higher taxes because of a bracket creep. Left the state with almost $1 billion in surplus, a state record. Well, why? How did you make all that money with all these cuts and with eliminating the taxes elsewhere? Urged that the surplus should go back to the taxpayers in the form of a rebate or tax cut. In Economy and Wages, he says that the average family income increased by over 50%. Again, I said this earlier. Are they working at these ranches? Life, marriage, and family are part of his values. So we've abandoned the building blocks of civilization. Life, marriage, and family issues aren't bargaining chips or political considerations. They're moral issues. That's really interesting because you're talking about politics and you're talking about law. So I think that you have the right to say that in a religious sense and in your own church and where you practice. But this is America. This is America. So I will never apologize for my faith, my convictions, or my values. Period. I like how I put period. Life begins at conception. That isn't just a biblical view. It's affirmed by modern science and every unique human DNA schedule, which is present at conception. As governor, I promoted a signed Fetal Protection Act. I imposed a ban on partial birth abortion, established waiting periods, crafted parental notification requirements, and passed a bill to mothers so mothers who brought a newborn to a hospital or fire station would not be persecuted for child abandonment. I do agree that's important, but I think that the issue with people that cannot support their children is something that's not a fire you put out later. There's a lot of causes of that, and I think that the increase in young pregnancies is a really big problem. I think Teen Mom made that super popular, and all of us really liked that show in my age group where I grew up. It was a popular show. You always wanted to watch it. Everyone loved Macy Bookout, but the problem becomes you're young and you're not mature and you're supposed to raise someone else at that point. And when you look at the statistics of homicide rates with young moms, either against young moms or against those children, it's not good. It is not good at all. And the issue becomes not even that young people are having babies at that point. That's the secondary issue. The issue is we live in a culture that is full of sex everywhere you go. You can't turn on normal TV show, and there not be sexual scenes for the most part. I mean, and it doesn't matter the age group that you're watching it anymore. When I was a kid, that was something that was never in child or teen movies like it is today, and now it's everywhere. And that is a sacred thing, whether you think it's religious or not. It's a commitment that you make to your partner for the most part. I agree that people can have their own viewpoint on that and everything else, but I think with human connection and human feelings and everything else that we feel, that is something that is intimate, and it is something where you are very vulnerable, and it's not something that is special when you share it with many people. So, and also it comes with a lot of side effects when you do that with lots of people. Feelings, other things, I don't know. You might need Jeffrey Epstein's doctor. All right. So, as a governor, I promoted a signed bill. He did that. And then I may stand alone, but I am absolutely faithful to the issue of marriage, not because it's politically expedient, but because it's the biblical position, the historical position for the right and the right position. We must defend, protect, and preserve traditional marriage. Common sense education. So he believed, and put this on here, when it comes to education, the Obama administration is lost at sea. We must shift power back to the state and local governments. In my 10 years as governor, I fought for parents, students, and local control. I wonder why I wanted that local control. Washington bureaucrats and big government central planners are out of control. Well, now he is one of those people in big government, kind of. Education, and Lindsey Graham is always visiting. I mean, Lindsey Graham is like one of the biggest people with some of those big government agencies that are contracting out certain things in our tax dollars. So education is a family function, not a federal function. Education decisions are best made by the local governments and moms and dads. And he believes that we must demand schools accountability and success for every child in the classroom. He opposes watering down our education system and standards, automatically promoting every student. He also opposes the Common Core and believes we should abolish the Federal Department of Education. We must kill Common Core and restore common sense. Well, it would be nice to do that, but I don't think Mike Huckabee has common sense reading some of this. The rising cost of college also threatens middle-class families, students in the American dream. For too many, college is where students discover mountains of debt, but not a lifelong career. We must tackle the establishment and reform our colleges, universities so they make sense for the jobs of tomorrow. That is a really interesting outlook when you talk about the funding that's going to a place where education is subsidized and people are not graduating with that same debt where he currently resides. And this is also a very interesting little snip of him talking about the military and what it is and what it is not used for.
Culture of the American military is definitely changing. Women are moving into combat roles. Don't ask, don't tell has obviously been dropped. And now Defense Secretary Ashton Carter recently directed the military to prepare for a moment when it is welcoming transgender persons to serve openly. As Commander-in-Chief, how would you handle that?
The military is not a social experiment. The purpose of the military is kill people and break things. It's not to transform the culture by trying out some ideas that some people think would make us a different country and more diverse. The purpose is to protect America. I'm not sure how paying for transgender surgery for soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines makes our country safer. We've reduced the military by 25% under President Obama. The disaster is that we've forgotten why we have a military. The purpose of it is to make sure that we protect every American wherever that American is. And if American is calling out for help, whether it's in Benghazi or at the border, then we ought to be able to answer it. We've not done that because we've decimated our military. We're flying B-52s. The most recent one that was put in service was November of 1962. A lot of the B-52s we're flying, we've only got 44 that are in service, combat ready. And the fact is, most of them are older than me. And that's pretty scary.
All right, so Mike Huckabee is leaving, being the governor of Arkansas. I'm going to keep saying it like that. And we're going to talk about some things here. So he is running in 2008 for his first presidential campaign. The Dumond case becomes a major issue. The victim's mother campaigns against Huckabee, and Lois Davidson makes a video that spread across the internet during this time. And in 2009, those cop deletions of one of the people that were pardoned keeps coming up. So these quotes here: any political ambitions of the former Republican presidential candidate, Mike Huckabee, could hurt his role in freeing Maurice Clemens. Could be hurt in his role. Could be hurt by his role in freeing Maurice Clemens. And it's pretty much speaking about that. So I also want to talk about some things that are really weird here with him and these political consequences. So again, we spoke earlier about $8.5 million annually going to the Lord's Ranch from Huckabee's DHS. He also took a few free private plane, I cannot say that in my notes. He took a few free private plane rides from Ted Schul. Thank you, Marsh, for not putting that back on my face as I was trying to figure out how to read those very simple words. In 2006, he had political support from the Duggar family at this time, and that's how he's saying that he helped get that Iowa victory. And Josh Duggar is around him during this time as well. And then he has a very big evangelical network backing for presidential campaigns. So there seems to be a little bit of a quid pro quo pattern that I keep seeing here. These are my thoughts. These are not allegations. And these, again, are my thoughts from a pattern of things that I am seeing here and that I have quoted. So you have Ted Schul, who's providing these flights. So basically, he gets clemency for associates and avoids prosecution. The Duggars are providing campaign work, and they get a public defense when scandals break. You have Baptist pastors providing religious cover, and then they get clemencies for their recommendations. So I think when you think about it in that way, I'm like, what the heck is going on? This is really interesting, hearing him talk about what he's wearing.
You know, as few questions I've got, the last one I need is to give him some more time. I love Donald Trump. He is a good man. I'm wearing a Trump tie tonight. Get over that one, okay?
that made in Mexico?
I don't know.
Is it made? Is it made in
Made
China?
in China or Mexico?
I have no idea. Again,
That is,
China or
and by the way,
Mexico? Such a nasty question. But thank you, Governor.
You're welcome. Let me tell you, Donald Trump would be a better president every day of the week, and twice on Sunday rather than Hillary. I've spent a lifetime in politics fighting the Clinton machine. You want to talk about what we're going to be up against next year? I'm the only guy on this stage. You know, everybody has an only guy. I'm the only guy this. I'm the only guy that. Well, let me tell you one thing that I am the only guy. The only guy that has consistently fought the Clinton machine every election I was ever in over the past 26 years. And not only did I fight them, but I beat them. Somebody says I'm a fighter. Well, I want to know, did you win? Well, I did. And not only did I fight them and win, I lived to tell about it. And I'm standing on this stage tonight as evidence of that. And I think that ought to be worth something.
Thank you, Governor.
John?
All right. So I think that that's really interesting in the spirit of conspiracy theories. And I think it's interesting in a few other ways. So it is something, I have a timeline that originally got me making timelines about a lot of things to understand historical context here. Mike Huckabee is saying that he is one of the only people that has defeated the Clintons, fought and won, and still alive. And he's making a joke there, which is also bizarre because as a politician, to be aware, or someone that was in charge of somewhere, and be aware that there's a running joke about people no longer being alive that have went against or have been, you know, a problem to that family. Excuse me. It's weird. It's weird that that's a running joke. I also don't know. I mean, he's claimed to have fought against them, the Clinton political machine during his political career in Arkansas, particularly by winning elections while the Clintons were prominent figures in the Democratic Party. However, his assertion to defeating the Clintons are often viewed as exaggerated because he never directly ran against either Bill or Hillary Clinton in a significant election. So what he's saying is he basically is running against people that the Clintons are supporting. So you could say that pretty much about any Democrat at that time that he's running against, if they're in line or within the Clinton political network, which is really bizarre and a really bizarre claim. And for someone that talks about false narratives or false claims and everything else, I'm surprised that he thought that was a good idea, or anyone in charge of his PR thought that was a good idea, because it's not true. How did he fight the Clinton campaign? And how did he allegedly win? Well, let me tell you, the white water scandal is a really weird thing that looks like it could easily be planted by a place that he started visiting over 50 years ago. He keeps quoting multiple times. And that was one of the first things that I believe is a paper trail showing, trying to get people that got married, that wanted to be political powerhouses and figures and had an agreement of a marriage, to get them to comply. And he was right there. Not making any allegations. I'm saying he was right there as that's happening. And he was the guy that went in and took over. So it's not like they all don't know about the scandal. This is him with that beautiful sticker of Mike Huckabee running for president. Could you imagine the world if Mike Huckabee would have won and became president over Donald Trump in 2016? I actually don't know what that would look like. I'm a little bit interested in what that would look like. I keep putting my hand up and making my camera turn on. So if it moves again, watch out. This is on my face again, and I just realized you guys cannot see what I was talking about. This is Mike Huckabee running for president. And then this, moving back, is him talking about...
I'm Mike Huckabee. I'm delighted to be on this stage with some remarkable fellow Republicans. None of us are a self-professed socialist. None of us on this stage are under investigation for the FBI because we destroyed government records or because we leaked secrets. I know that there are some in the Wall Street to Washington axis of power who speak of all of us contemptuously. But I'm here to say that I think we are, in fact, the A-team. We have some remarkable people. And in fact, not only are we the A-team, we even have our own Mr. T, who doesn't mind saying about others, you're a fool. And I'm delighted to be here with all of these guys and would put any of them in an administration that I led. Thank you very much.
Yeah, he calls Donald Trump Mr. T right there. A little bit weird. Here's my Pringle. I thought I would be able to eat that fast.
I'm Mike Huckabee, or a
Awkward.
self-professed socialist.
All right,
None
hold
of us.
on. Oopsies. All right. This is Mike Huckabee saying that he's not homophobic. And I don't know if this is the one, but at one point I have a thing in here and I'm almost done. I'm getting to the end of this where he is calling someone gay without calling them gay. And it's someone that a lot of people think are gay and have accused for a very long time about.
I've heard people argue with me and said, well, Jesus never said anything about marriage. I said, yes, he actually did. A man shall leave his father and mother, and a woman shall leave her home, and the two shall become one flesh. That's a marriage ceremony if I've ever heard one. Look, I'm not against anybody. I'm really not. I'm not a hater. I'm not homophobic. I honestly don't care what people do personally in their individual lives, but I tell you, the reason when people say, well, why don't you just kind of get on the right side of history? I said, you got to understand, this for me is not about the right side or the wrong side of history. This is the right side of the Bible. And unless God rewrites it, edits it, sends it down with his signature on it, it's not my book to change. Folks, that's why I stand where I stand.
All right. So then moving on, we have Mike Huckabee pictured here. In Arkansas with the governors. That's his daughter there in the middle. She became governor later on. And there's a pattern I feel like that continues on here. So he used a known child predator, Josh Duggar, to win the Iowa 2008. And I guess that Josh Duggar was not convicted at that time, but it was known that he was a predator to children. And he admitted to it. Immediately defended the predator when the scandal broke in 2015. He was aware of it before then. He shared political operations with the abuse enablers. He co-authored books with an accused child predator, which I have here in a second. And he built a career on family values while protecting predators. He leveraged predator networks into diplomatic appointments. In my opinion, that's my opinion. All right, so we have a co-author connection. It's really weird. This guy named John Perry. I'm going to show a video of him. Mike Huckabee's books are a whole nother thing. They have some weird quotes in there. Okay, weird quotes. He like attacks Beyonce in this short little excerpt. He talks about basically Jay-Z being her pimp, which is such a bizarre thing to say. And this person that he's co-authoring this book with, who honestly is a ghostwriter by some of the articles I'm seeing, is accused of assaulting a child. The victim was between the ages of 11 and 14 when the adult occurred, and Perry's wife left him, citing inappropriate marital conduct. He also wrote for Ray Moore and other Southern Baptist leaders. Remember, Mike Huckabee was within the Southern Baptist community. So we have John Perry co-authoring Huckabee's books. Character is the Issue in 1997 and Do the Right Thing in 2008. If only he did the right thing with some of these creeps that keep creeping around his circles. He's accused of child assault in 2015, again, when that victim was 11 to 14 years old, and his wife left him. So, just a little bit more about this real quick.
Now we turn to a pedophile that preyed upon girls, who, of course, is also a Republican.
So this is the ghostwriter, or actually the co-writer, of 2 books that Mike Huckabee wrote. And I love the titles of these books. Do the Right Thing, Inside the Movement That's Bringing Common Sense Back to America, and Character is the Issue. You gotta love that. So his writing partner here, John Perry, has actually been, he's come clean. Like, he's actually admitted to molesting, like you said, young girls. And this isn't the only person. This is in Mike Huckabee's life. And this is what's really complicating Huckabee's bid, I think, to run. This is a man who has historically sold like snake oil treatments, anti-diabetic treatments. This is a man who was like really linked to the Duggar family. I mean, that's another person who has admitted now to molesting young girls, not just young girls, but his own sisters. So there you've got the double whammy, the pedophilia and the incest. And Huckabee has continuously defended these individuals, has come to their defense, and has also worked very, very closely with them. Now, we're not sitting here saying that Mike Huckabee himself has committed any sort of crime in this respect, but he has been very close to just kind of a trail of devastation with regard to this really, really just sinister behavior.
Yeah, and his efforts to distance himself from them have been failures. You know, and when you add the horrible Wayne Dumont story, which is still connected to Huckabee, the rapist who he worked to get out of prison, perhaps because that guy shared Huckabee's religious fervor, and then he raped and murdered after his release from prison when he was governor. He certainly wouldn't be the only chief executive to get someone out of prison who then did something terrible afterwards, but nonetheless, it's something that it's worthy thing for people to talk about. But then, he gave that speech earlier this year where he talked about, when talking about Caitlyn Jenner, and that, this absurd comment that if he'd known now that that he would have called himself a woman so he could have gotten into the bathroom when he was in high school.
Yeah, and like ogled all the girls in the showers.
What kind of hideous creep are you? Just who talks like this? Who thinks bathrooms are the issue here?
Yeah.
And also, who doesn't think that if they say something like that out loud, that it's not going to be received with disgust?
Yeah. And,
I mean,
and this guy, it's just, I mean, somebody who sort of has lived a life where that sort of behavior is not, where those sort of things aren't thought of as disgusting in any way.
So how is it that this person who has so much political power has just time after time again found himself having these deep relationships with individuals who are under scrutiny for the most heinous of crimes? I mean, is that like wrong time, just over and over and over? Does he just attract these kinds of people in his life?
So there are two components to this. One is the Mike Huckabee angle. Here's a guy who, along with all other conservatives, said, my God, Obama sat in the pew as Reverend Wright said things that they considered un-American. Well, he didn't co-write a book with Reverend Wright, right? This John Perry guy, you spent, I assume, a ton of time to write two books, ironically labeled Do the Right Thing and Character is the Issue. According to Nashville Police Department spokesperson, he molested the victim, the girl involved, was between the ages of 11 and 14.
The alleged victim, whatever, there's no criminal charges even filed.
No, but there was a sworn affidavit during divorce proceedings where he admitted to doing this.
Is that right?
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty, this was, his wife said, this is why we're getting divorced.
Right, the wife said it. I don't think he said it.
No, he did.
Yeah.
He admitted it.
Yeah.
In the divorce, yes, he molested a girl between the ages of 11 and 14.
But of course, the statute of limitations had passed.
But if you want to say on the Huckabee issue, hey, guys, guilt by association is not right. Okay. To me, the larger issue is the second issue, which is that conservative fundamentalist right-wingers who love to blame others and judge other people's lives, the gays, and the society's falling apart, last days of Pompeii, and Caitlyn Jenner this and that. And then it turns out, look at that, Dennis Hastard's a pedophile, Huckabee's co-writer is a pedophile, Josh Duggar, who they have knighted, and Huckabee has defended over and over again, is an incestuous
pedophile.
I mean, you could argue he was 14 years old at the time, but is I guess incestuous molester, right?
Okay.
And so you got to understand that they're not driven to actually protect your family. They call it family values, but they don't mean that at all. And in fact, if someone has molested your family, they're oftentimes the first ones to, if they're in the right camp, they're on the right team, the first ones to step up and defend them. That's why Brit Hume and Geraldo at Fox jump up and say Hastard's the victim the first time they hear the story, right? No. Huckabee jumps up and says Josh Duggar's, he was not a victim, but like he was a young kid and the Duggars handled it the right way and all that. So, no, they don't mean any of that. All they want to do is be on that team and they want to attack everybody else on the other team. The problem is Like, it's one thing to attack in terms of we don't agree. Like, I attack Huckabee because I don't agree with his ideas. It's another thing to say those people should be treated differently. They shouldn't have the same rights as we do. We should pass laws against them. That's an entirely different matter. And understand that when they say that, their agenda is not to protect your family. Their agenda is hate and politics. That's what it is.
And I get that. I mean, I get that that is the agenda when it comes to trying to pass legislation. I think what's so confusing to me about these stories, as somebody who does try to look at the scientific underpinnings of these things and who tries to understand the mental illness involved, the kind of the I guess disconnect between reality and some sort of reality that you've built up in your mind, is that this story is fundamentally about hypocrisy. Why defend the Duggars? Why get involved with these individuals? How is that in alliance with any of these people's core values?
Because he's on their team. He was at Josh Duggar was at the Family Research Council, which of course Huckabee loves. They're Republicans from Arkansas. They're his people.
But even when somebody's on your team, if you're savvy at all, you learn when to distance yourself from them. You learn when that's the turd in the pool and they're bringing the whole team down. You don't defend them to your last breath. It's just, he was defending them above and beyond, Josh Duggar at least, above and beyond Megyn Kelly. Megyn Kelly was like, oh, I don't know, man. He did admit it.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, it doesn't matter. He was the victim. Like, what is that?
Yeah, well,
Sad.
The one thing it is not is a concern about morality. That is not.
All right. So I think that's really interesting hearing the way she puts it. And I agree with a lot of those same points. So wrapping this all up here, we have, again, that Family Research Council pipeline. So predators in Washington were in positions of power through this group. We have the Family Research Council, or the FRC, at the top there. And then we have Tony Perkins, the president, who hired Josh Duggar. And Josh Duggar was the executive director from 2013 to 2015. Here's a mugshot of Josh Duggar. His first scandal that broke around this time in 2015 was not the only scandal we saw from him. So Josh Duggar in 2019 allegedly used the internet to download child geography, some of which depicts the intimate abuse of children under the age of 12. That's from CBS in 2021. April 29th, 2021, Josh Duggar is arrested on federal geography charges. That's from CNN. December of 2021, a jury found Josh Duggar, 33. You see that age, 33 again? That keeps popping up and popping off. Guilty Thursday of 2 counts of downloading and possessing child geography. I actually went back and listened to the police officers pulling up when this happened, when he is at a car dealership and everything else. And it's a very bizarre interrogation where the police officers kind of stopped pressing. I do feel like they were being respectful, but at the same time, I don't know who they knew his daddy was, but I think that they really did a disservice to victims or potential victims or people that maybe people didn't know about, because they didn't really ask or interrogate those follow-up and harsh questions. Our judicial system cannot be a judicial system if it is weaponized against certain people. Okay? It's not actually justice if it's only working out for certain people around here. May 25th, 2022, Josh Duggar was sentenced Wednesday to 151 months in prison, more than 12 years. All right, around this time, that's not the only person around Mike Huckabee that's making waves. Donald Trump pardoned or gave clemency to somebody, basically pardoned them or whatever, but clemency, same thing, different day. It's not the same thing if you want to get technical, but in July of 2019, here's a quote. Former President Donald Trump granted him, Ted Schul, clemency in 2019 at the request of former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee. That's from the Missouri Independent in 2023. Huckabee's statement. Here's the statement on this. I helped him because I feel like he's innocent, and so do other people. Remember, Ted Schul is the guy that was in charge of the Lord's Ranch. with over decades of those incidences going on and major, major fraud. All right. Here is a few more clips as we wrap this all up. All right. So I feel like that is a super emotional part of this story, and I didn't dive deep into this in the research other than the brief parts that who is Bill Gothard? So how does this relate to Huckabee? Gothard cultivated close ties with Huckabee, and he was an alumnus of Gothard's basic seminar into Jim Daley, mayor of Little Rock. So, with the encouragement from Mayor Daley, Gothard opened his Little Rock Training Center and an empty VA hospital purchased by Hobby Lobby and donated to the Gothard's Institute. And who is Gothard? So, you saw him a little bit in that video, but Bill Gothard is the founder of the Institute of Basic Life Principles. He had faced multiple scandals involving allegations of harassment and alleged physical conduct and abuse, with numerous women accusing him of misconduct over the years. His resignation in 2014 followed a series of allegations and legal actions against him and his organization, and they have continued, highlighting a pattern of abuse and controversial teachings within the ministry. So it's a little bit weird when you hear about all that. The Duggars kind of took his like family fundamentalist, like family tree and hierarchy teachings, and their family was pretty much based on that. There's a lot of assault and things of that nature that he is accused of and that charges have been brought forward of. And actually, it's saying here too, the allegations of plaintiffs are spanning over 3 decades. So when did he go to be an alumni at one of his seminars? Interesting thought. Finishing up. I'm getting there. So Huckabee, Huckabee. Don't tuck any dollars for him, because he will call you a pimp. I'm sorry, I was referring to his Beyonce quote. So again, he was defending Ted Schul, and his quote is, "I helped him because I feel like he's innocent, and so do other people." Is he a prosecutor? Is he the judge? All right. So I realized you couldn't see what I was just looking at because I'm getting tired. So, man, I am losing my voice. My husband's going to be happy that I'm not talking as much around the house as I start doing this more. All right. So here's what I was reading from. And here is a review of where they're at now. So who the heck has he been around and where are they at? Mike Huckabee, well, he's the U.S. ambassador to a tiny country in the middle of the Middle East, appointed November 2024 and confirmed on April 2025. Mike Johnson, who you saw in photos before, he's the Speaker of the House. Tony Perkins, he is the Family Research Council president. Ted Schul, it's a free man, thanks to that Trump clemency that was influenced by Mike Huckabee. Josh Duggar is still serving 12 plus years in federal prison for his last charges. And Paul Pressler, he died in 2024 after settling a lawsuit. So that's where they're at now. Those are the people that we mainly talked about today. And Mike Huckabee was connected to each of them in some way in a political circle. That's not even focusing on the Whitewater and the Clintons that were happening around the same time in the political networks. There are a lot of ongoing investigations here. So the DOJ of Southern Baptist Convention is still handling intimate abuse complaints. This is a picture of one of his books over here. I guess buy it if you would like to hear what this man has to say. There are over 52 lawsuit allegations against the Lord's Ranch for survivors seeking justice. Over 52 survivors are suing the Lord's Ranch to seek justice on that. What are the patterns? What are these patterns? I feel like you could come to these conclusions yourself. These patterns are, in my opinion, what I see from the facts. Again, these are my opinions of the patterns. You come to your own conclusion, and I am not making allegations of who he is. I'm just saying these seem to be things that are prominent around him. religious authority. So he was in religious authority positions. He was the Arkansas Baptist Convention president from 1989 to 1990, and he continued to be in those religious circles. Knowledge. He had a lot of documented evidence of abuse from the 1990s onwards. What did he do with it? Regulatory capture. He appointed abusers to regulate themselves. Financial benefits. He accepted free flights from Youngling abuse enablers. Youngling. From Youngling abuse enablers. I don't know why Marsh was... I'm going to have to ask him about that one if he fell asleep. He probably did. Political exploitation, and I hope that he did. He deserved to fall asleep. I'm about to fall asleep. Political exploitation. He used known youngling abusers in campaigns. Public defense. He immediately defended abusers when scandals broke. Federal protection. He used connections to secure clemency. And he never seemed to care or help the victims, in my opinion. These are all my opinions, but I feel like there is no documented concern for any victim other than Josh Duggar being a victim. I can't with that one. I literally can't. Look at his face. That's my face. That is my face that I'm making right now. How do I do this? How do I do it? Grumpy cat all over that, because it's like, how can you look at this and not be disgusted? If you are not disgusted, I think you're a part of the problem. So this is an ad that we have going on here that I found looking at some of these books and stuff. So he's talking about radicals are pushing their cancel culture onto our children. Help your kids find their voice with this free gift bundle. I get my rights from God, not the government. That's in one of those bubbles, and I refuse to be silenced. Well, you know what? You know what? Who the heck is he trying to silence right now? Tucker Carlson? Who is he saying should be silenced? Tucker Carlson, essentially, without saying it. He might be saying it indirectly, but he's saying it. That's what he's meaning. He's like, oh, you think that's horrible? Oh, wow. How dare you ever say that? That's what his whole thing is about. And he's been tweeting about him. He's been tweeting about everyone that speaks out about him. And he's saying, I refuse to be silenced. And also, he's taking it personally. I said, who speaks out against him? Tucker Carlson has never speaked out against him other than the fact that he met with one of our most famous spies in America that he was friends with and let meet him at the U.S. Embassy in Israel. That's not a thing. That's not a thing. That should never be a thing. That should never be a thing. It's silly that that's a thing. So throughout this whole time, I keep seeing the financial benefits of predator protection. Not saying who's protecting who, but we'll see here. There's Duggar endorsements from the Iowa caucus victory. Ted Schul flights. He's getting free private plane flights. The Evangelical Network. He had the Baptist Convention presidency, and I'm sure a lot of those people were his donors or influencing him in that Evangelical Network that we see to be pretty prominent with another group recently. And then his campaign funding. So that Huck PAC had $400,000 to the family. This is his path to being the Israel ambassador. So 2008, 2016, he's campaigning with that predator support. 2019, he requests Ted Schul clemency from Trump. He's influencing it. 2024, Trump wins the election. November 2024, he's nominated as the Israel ambassador. That is so weird. Like, I literally cannot wrap my head around this, that we thought it was a good idea to send someone who's saying other things and making decisions based on this to be a representative for America and not think that there's going to be a conflict of interest. All right, looking at this power network here. So here's who's active, here's who's free. Mike Huckabee is the U.S. ambassador to Israel. Mike Johnson, he's the Speaker of the House. Mike Johnson was running in these circles. Full disclosure. Mike Johnson is not guilty by association. Full disclosure. Mike Huckabee, not guilty by association. Tony Perkins, not guilty by association, but he is in the Family Research Council and he's the president. They're all three active. I will say, Tony Perkins hired Josh Duggar. Mike Huckabee was friends with the Duggars. He had the Duggar son, Josh Duggar, help him on a political campaign. Now, these other people, Ted Schul went to prison. He had to get clemency. So you could say he's guilty, but in the words of Mike Huckabee, he doesn't think he was. Josh Duggar is also in federal prison. He's supposed to be released in 2033. So yeah, there's that one. I feel like you see a very clear pattern. That photo in the bottom right is up on there twice. I feel like this man is, I feel like there's a very clear trail here. He's never accepting the responsibility for victim selection. He always blames the system failures, never expresses concerns for victims. He attacks the critics as political each time, even though he has his own political ideology with it. Okay, he can say that it's not political, but when you make biblical things political, it's political. And he claims he couldn't have known. Those are all my allegedly things, but that's the pattern I'm allegedly seeing here, that he's a weirdo. I mean, he's weird. I don't even know what you could say other than that. Here is when he makes a comment that I thought was really bizarre with current state of affairs and someone that keeps taking trips over the pond.
Mike Huckabee is now targeting Lindsey Graham for a couple of reasons. One, because he thinks that Lindsey Graham isn't being vocally supportive enough in saying he'll do anything to get Trump's proposed Supreme Court nominee onto the court. And also because he thinks that Graham has been a little bit too critical of Devin Nunes in his intelligence investigations. And so him being critical of Lindsey Graham isn't a surprise. But what is a bit of a surprise is the particular angle he uses to attack Lindsey Graham, which you're going to see in this clip.
You can always count on Lindsey Graham, can't you, Governor Huckabee?
Well, I'm very disappointed in Lindsey. I sometimes wonder what uniform he puts on each morning when he goes out to the field to play. And I'm not just talking about the partisan uniform, but I think to bring that kind of criticism and to call the chairman of the House Intel Committee, who is a person of integrity, to call him an Inspector Clouseau, to use those kind of terms basically to diminish him, it's very unfortunate. It's demeaning.
He just called him gay.
That's exactly what he did.
And in case it wasn't obvious, which by the way, Mike, it was obvious. He then said, and I'm not just talking about his partisan uniform. Yeah, we know that you're calling him gay.
Yeah.
This guy wanted to be president, and we feared for a little while back during a more, I guess, sane time compared to Trump that he could be president. He just called Lindsey Graham gay.
Yeah. Now, it's not to say that Lindsey Graham isn't gay.
Yeah, exactly. Not that there's anything wrong with that.
That's right. And it's not to say that Lindsey Graham's hypocrisy on gay rights issues shouldn't be called out. And by the way, we don't know for sure what Lindsey Graham is or isn't.
I have no idea.
Now, those rumors have been swirling around for a long, long time. Now, the Republicans usually don't talk about him because they like to pretend that they're all straight and that their absolute obsession with gay sex is just because they care about family values, right? So if you want to criticize Lindsey Graham for being a hypocrite, great, God bless, go forward. In fact, I'm going to do that on a separate issue in just 1 second. But Mike Huckabee pretends to be the family values guy. But now all of a sudden, when you got to go dirty and you got to undercut another Republican, which ironically he's criticizing Lindsey Graham for criticizing other Republicans.
Exactly.
But he's willing to do it in the dirtiest way possible.
Well, I think he was quoting Jesus, actually.
Oh, is that right?
When he did that, the uniform thing. Jesus was always talking about uniforms.
Yeah.
Now, look, Lindsey Graham has been, over the past decade, a little bit more rational on a couple of issues occasionally, and he has certainly been more willing to attack Donald Trump on a number of different issues. But that doesn't mean that he's some great guy or he doesn't deserve to be attacked. So let's attack him. So there we were talking about Neil Gorsuch and his chances of getting onto the court. And so Lindsey Graham had this to say: if you do not allow an up or down vote on this guy, then you don't care about traditions of the Senate, and you don't care about President Trump being treated fairly. The one thing I will not do is allow President Trump to be denied what every other president has had the ability to do: nominate qualified people. I'm not going to play the game two different ways. which by the way probably opened up another joke from Mike Huckabee. But let's move on from that. So there he's saying every other president gets to nominate these judges. How could you take that away? How could you have two sets of rules? Which is weird because I did some Googling and I found articles like this from last year. After meeting Merrick Garland, Graham stands by Supreme Court strategy of denying Barack Obama an up and down vote on his nominee. That's weird. Does he not know that Google exists?
So this is, again, what drives me crazy about the Republicans and the media. So they are notorious, pathological liars. So this Lindsey Graham comes out, Obama, you're not going to get a hearing on Merrick Garland. I don't care. We're not even going to hear him. I don't care how qualified he is.
And he says he's qualified. He says he's great.
Yeah, he said that about Merrick Garland, Obama's pick. He said it, right? And he said, I don't care what his positions are.
Okay, so I found that to be a really interesting thing because Lindsey Graham is a huge supporter of Mike Huckabee currently being over there, and I feel like they have a lot of the same agenda currently. So I wonder if he would still feel like this in 2025. A thought that goes through my mind all the time. I can't believe 19 of you, whether you've been here the whole time or you've been here a little bit, have sat it out with me. So thank you so much. This is almost to the very end. I cannot believe some of you are up at 2 a.m. with me yapping away. Mike Huckabee, after all of this and after he left those two campaigns, started a talk show. And this is the one when he talks about getting the call to become a member representing America in a different country. So here we go. If I can hit play, I have Cheez-Its on my fingers.
Good evening. Welcome to Huckabee Today. I'm Mike Huckabee, and well, some things have happened since we were last together. I got a little phone call on Tuesday of this week, and it was rather startling. It was from President-elect Donald Trump, and he said, I'd like for you to be ambassador to Israel. Well, I picked up the phone from the floor, and we had a good conversation. And I told him that I would be willing to serve my country and my president, and it would be an honor. Now, what does that mean for me? I haven't a clue in terms of the timing and what that means, how it will all shake out. It'll take a while. It's subject to Senate confirmation. Thank goodness the Republicans won the Senate. Otherwise, I'd be toast. Wouldn't have been anything to consider. But the Republicans did win. And I'll tell you who's winning right now, the American people. As President Trump is picking a team of people who are serious players and ready to do the hard work and the heavy lifting. And I'm delighted to be a part of that, and especially because of a longstanding relationship that I've had with the state of Israel that goes all the way back to July of 1973. I was a month short of my 18th birthday back then. And that was the first time I went to Israel. It was life-changing. I've never been the same since. Starting in 1981, I started taking groups of people. I've probably been there 100 times. Many years I would go repeatedly. Tens of thousands of people I've taken, escorted them through the land, helping them to understand it strategically as well as biblically. And so for this particular assignment to come to me was something for which I am passionate about. Now, let me be clear. The role of the ambassador is not to go and tell everybody what he or she thinks. The role of the ambassador is to carry out the policies of the elected president. Nothing frustrates me more than seeing somebody who is appointed or employed who somehow believes that his or her opinion is the one that really matters. Only one person got elected November the 5th, Donald J. Trump. Every ambassador, every cabinet secretary, all are there to do one thing: carry out the policies that the people voted for. And boy, did they ever vote in a big way, in a landslide, historic election. So we don't have to second guess and say, well, they may not have really wanted Donald Trump to leave. Oh, they wanted it, and they wanted it significantly. And that's why all of us who have the privilege of serving our country and this president would do well to remember who got elected, and the fact that our job is to make sure that what you voted for because you're the ultimate boss, you, the people. That gets done. And I pledge myself to that. I have no idea when this will happen. It could be months, it could be weeks. Certainly nothing will happen before January 5th when the Senate is convened and they have to start the process of confirmation. So we got a little while to buckle up and keep doing this show. Well, I've told you a little bit about what's coming up in my life as best I know it, but I'm happy.
All right. So that's Mike Huckabee saying what he's doing, where he's going, and how that's all. Oh, I'm working on pressing buttons here and there. That's him telling us what's new in his life. I also want to preface this by saying he said July of 1973. July of 1973. That's important because he doesn't really expand much on that more. But what I will say, 1973, July 1st of 1973, there was a Philadelphian military attaché in Washington who was assassinated in the driveway of a Chevy Chase, Maryland home here in America. And then going into what's happening overseas, 1973 was a year of war. All right. So Israel faced pivotal year marked by the Yom Kippur War, a surprise attack that deeply impacted the nation's security, political landscape, and collective psyche, reshaping its future trajectory. Okay. That's what happened in 1973. But it's really interesting because you see this like shuttle of diplomacy over there between the United States and our relationship. And the other weird thing is there's a question in 1973 about the thing that Pollard was arrested for giving secrets away about. So it starts at the N and it ends with nuclear. Put the N on the top in front of that. There was also an alliance of Egyptian and Syrian forces launched in that war that happened that year. And it was on a Jewish day of Holy Atonement. So it was a 3-week conflict. And then also, weird thing here, I don't know where I lost that, but 1973. No, I lost it. There was the Olympic issue that happened that year, I'm pretty sure. No, hold on. I had like 3 tabs open. All right, so 1973 was the Maccabi Games. So the 9th Maccabi Games were held July 9th to the 19th in 1973. They opened at a stadium there in Israel. So Spain, Costa Rica made their debuts at the game. And a total of 1,800 athletes competed on behalf of 27 countries and 20 branches of sport and 30 venues across Israel. The game took place in 10 months after the 1972 Olympics in Munich. Those games in Munich were very sad because 11 Israeli athletes and coaches were slain during a massacre there. It started a pivotal war on terror a little bit more in international affairs that was more public to the regular average Joe. Because it started what led to the demise, in my opinion, of Yoni Netanyahu. So Yoni Netanyahu, Jonathan Netanyahu, who is Benjamin Netanyahu's brother, actually died in a raid fighting the people that were in charge of the group that slayed those Israeli athletes and coaches. So it was a somber series of events because there was actually a plane hijacking that he was on a rescue mission to save those people. There's a lot of people that were on that hijacking too. So thank you for looking forward to it, Amanda. Thank you for coming. All right. So that is Mike Huckabee wrapping it up. I made so many tabs open trying to tell you those very simple things because my brain's like mush. This is Mike Huckabee talking about an independent Palestinian state.
There is talk of a possible shift in a long-held cornerstone of U.S. policy in the Middle East. Mike Huckabee, the U.S. ambassador to Israel, suggested that the U.S. is no longer pursuing the goal of an independent Palestinian state. Well, the State Department says that Huckabee was speaking for himself. Elizabeth Palmer has more from East Jerusalem. Good morning. As the talks on a ceasefire in Gaza sputter along, millions of Israelis and Palestinians hope that any deal would not only end the war, but lead to a two-state solution. That is, Israelis and Palestinians living in two side-by-side independent countries on this land. But Ambassador Huckabee, in an interview with our partners at the BBC, called that whole premise into question.
As far as the two-state solution is concerned, it's an aspirational goal, but the question is, where should that be?
It's a position Huckabee has held for at least a decade. That is, that the Palestinians should not be able to set up a state on land that Zionists claim God gave to Israel.
At what point does it have to be in the same piece of real estate that Israel occupies, a tiny little piece of real estate? Muslim countries have 644 times the amount of land that are controlled by Israel.
But helping to displace Palestinians is a toxic idea in the Muslim world. Really, it's a non-starter. For CBS Mornings, I'm Elizabeth Palmer in East Jerusalem.
All right, so I found that to be super interesting because we just heard him say that the job he was accepting was to represent the administration and their goals, not your own personal goals. But what is he doing? This is June of 2025. This is before February 2026, obviously, with that timeline. I know most of us don't know what year it is because we're not writing it on our homework or assignments in school anymore. But I mean, what the heck? June of 2025, this man is going over there saying that, coming from the same state who helped sign the Oslo Accords. The president that came from there helped sign it. And then basically the country passed laws so that it was never really possible or could become possible because they would never accept the two-state solution. As much as people can ignore that, you can go look at the UN Security Council votes as well. And the United States has vetoed any resolution for there to be a two-state solution. Actually, almost all of our vetoes on any major foreign united scale is about this issue. Over 80%, for the most part, I think it's 80, over 80% of our American vetoes with NATO are about this issue. Even though we're the ones that wanted the Oslo Accords and everything else. And there was an assassination that I will cover when I go over the Oslo Accords, with the information about the Clintons and their scandals, where the only prime minister that wanted that type of peace was assassinated in front of all of his people. And the next person that was elected by less than a 1% lead, or like a 1%. It was like 0 to 1% lead, named Benjamin Netanyahu for his first reign as Israeli prime minister. There was a short interim person, and then he was elected. So that's how that happened. And he was a person of peace for his country. And Netanyahu was out in the streets rioting with people that he would arrest today. There's a lot of riots there, but if people were rioting like that, he would arrest them today because I would assume he would arrest them today. That's my thought process. He was walking in front of a coffin saying that Rabin was an enemy to the people of Israel. And there were nooses in the streets, and he encouraged that behavior. And that prime minister was shot in a crowd of people after signing the Oslo Accords because he said, "We've had enough." All right, so this is the last clip I have here. This is in August of 2025. I don't think this is funny at all. And this is something I can do a part 2 on to expand a little bit more about some of the issues if people are interested, of things that I don't think people realize about water rights, about electricity rights, about how water rights, electricity rights, permit rights, what's illegal right now in Gaza. Collecting your rainwater is illegal in Gaza. Having a green sleeping bag donated to you by someone in aid, it's blocked at the border because it's seen as a military color. They made potatoes illegal. They made flour illegal going in. Fuel, petrol, illegal. These people were not allowed to get out for years. They didn't have food. Who was arming them? Who were the only people allowed to get in and out? That's all I'm going to say before this last one, and then I'll wrap it all up.
The war in Gaza began 22 months ago today with the Hamas surprise attack on Israel. Today, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu told the Fox News channel Israel intends to take full control of Gaza in order to destroy Hamas. He said administration of Gaza would eventually be turned over to friendly Arab forces. Deborah Patta talked about that and more with the U.S. Ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee.
Many of the families of hostages do not support an expansion of the war and a takeover of Gaza. In fact, the mother of Nimrod Cohen said this would be a death sentence for the hostages. Surely their voice matters.
Families have different views of what should be done, what could be done. When I hear people say, well, the Israeli government, they don't want to end this war, that's absurd. That's utterly false.
President Trump has said there's real starvation in Gaza, and he appeared deeply troubled by images of starving children.
Oh, I think that there are certainly people suffering in Gaza. It's happening because Hamas has not allowed the food to get to the people who are hungry.
We spoke to the World Food Program, and they have not been shown any evidence of this at all.
Are you telling me they say that their food has not been looted?
No, I'm saying there's no evidence that it's being diverted to Hamas.
I'm shocked they would say that.
According to the UN, over 1,400 people have been killed trying to get food, nearly 900 near the US-backed Gaza Humanitarian Foundation sites.
We've had reports that there have been incidences. So forgive me if I'm a little skeptical when someone says, these people are being killed at the GHF sites. If I would hear that, I assure you we'd be interested in getting the details.
At what point is the human suffering in Gaza so great that the US demands that Israel allows free flow of humanitarian aid into Gaza?
I think Israel is allowing a very steady flow of food. And you know, here's a question I'd love to ask some of the people who are so critical of Israel. How many countries who are in the middle of a war are expected to feed the enemies who murdered their people?
Article 55 of the Geneva Convention begs to differ with the ambassador. Israel, as an occupying force, has a duty to bring in food and medical supplies for Gaza's civilian population.
Okay, Deborah Patta, thank you.
All right, so that was Mike Huckabee talking about that. Here's the last slide here. That's my username if you'd like to follow me on the left. And Charlie Goes Max helped me put together this presentation and run the back end of things throughout the show. I'm going to end this with saying on that little note from Mike Huckabee, sir. First of all, you're hearing it right there. You've been hearing it for months. Second of all, you're saying the GHF is an American aid. You're an American. You're our ambassador. It's obviously not working, and people are suffering at those places. It's your job to ensure that that's not happening. That's a part of your job. Number 3, you did not assist until people made it a really big deal that there were Americans that were detained illegally in these areas. Number 4, American journalists passed away, people with dual citizenships. Number 5, you were hearing it for months. So when you say, if I was hearing it, you've already heard it, sir. Maybe get some hearing aids or don't be in that position if you can't handle it. And number 6, there's a difference between the word food and the word aid. There's a really big difference. And how many people live in Gaza? Does anyone? I'm going to Google it because hold on. Gaza population. Population of Gaza in 2023. All right, we're looking at, I need like an actual number. I don't want the percentage of that. All right. The West Bank in Gaza in total It's looking at 5.1 million people over. It had a 2.42% increase from 2022. Wow. That's a lot higher than I thought. All right, so I want you to think about this. In one of the videos, I saw him talk about that and say we've given over 100 meals. Or not 100 meals. He said we've given over 1 million meals. Well, if there's 5 million people there, and a lot of them are probably not there anymore. That's just a disgusting reality we're going to have to live with. 1 million meals in a few weeks or months or anything else is one meal. And you have millions of people living there. And you know how starvation works. And once it gets to a certain point, there is no coming back. And you're the one that's going to have to live with that for eternity. Not those that spoke out against it. So, if you care about children, if you care about all of God's children, I think you would care more about the people that have been oppressed for a really long time in an occupation where they welcomed people with open arms at first. And I think that the true history does need discussed about how people welcomed refugees into their homes and into their communities. Because that's not spoken about enough. You can change passports, you can change stamps, you can change all of it all you want, but that doesn't change history. It just changes those you can manipulate into believing whatever false narrative you want to work with. But God knows the truth. And if you have a brain, if you want to use your brain, I think a lot of us need to think about what truth means. And sometimes that's having really difficult, hard conversations. And sometimes that's also accepting that you've been indoctrinated in certain ways. All of us are susceptible to that. All of us are susceptible to not being aware, not knowing. But the thing that you have to do as human is you have to move forward. You have to pick yourself up. You have to learn what the truth is. And you have to say, I was wrong. Let's have a conversation about this. Oh, I've changed my mind completely on this, and this is why. You need to practice being uncomfortable so that we can all be comfortable. Because we are literally all floating on this rock in the middle of space, pretending like our taxes are more important than protecting our children against predators. That's what's going on right now. We are more worried about going to work to serve our governments with our souls for money, essentially, instead of pouring our souls into the people that we care about and the things we care about, while no one seems to be doing a damn thing about protecting the children. You can say it all you want. You can talk the talk. You can walk the walk. I don't see the walk walking. All right? How fast did Jimmy Kimmel's show get canceled? I mean, how fast did that happen? That's something that would happen overseas in a country that has the CCP, by the way. That's not something that would happen in America with free speech. So take that with what you will, but we are all more important than the 1%. And that 1% literally does not exist without the 99. So you are all super important. You are all super capable. And you are all worthy of being able to take one step in the right direction every single day. We all mess up. We all mess up. We all have made bad decisions. Sometimes we don't know we're making a bad decision. Sometimes we don't know when we're making an uninformed one. But I know I see some of the comments about those numbers, and I think that narratives can be so manipulated and emotionally manipulative to us when you mix religion with things like this too. But I'm going to tell you right now, the wars that are spoken about in a historical context back then are a lot different than the wars that are fought today. And we're not having, I mean, we should not be having in 2026 a religious crusade. Do you believe in freedom? That's the question you ask. If you believe in freedom, having a war based on religion is asinine. It's an oxymoron. The only people that are acting as the so-called T word that's in the list are the people that are desperate. And the people that they're fighting against were once that desperate too. And it's in the CIA declassified documents. The 3 military groups that made up the IDF today, 2, I know at least confirmed in my head, 2 out of the 3 were considered T groups. They were on a list. So you need to ask yourself, why is this all about picking sides? Because the only sides that there are here are right and wrong and good and evil. It doesn't matter what religious doctrine you subscribe to. Muslims are dying. Jews are dying. Non-Muslims and non-Jews are dying in this war. Kids are dying. Mothers are dying. Old people that play piano are being ran over by bulldozers. And it's not just there. Your soul is something that you have to give away. And you should never do that. And you should never sell it. And you should never sell the things that you believe in. Or you should never make sacrifices for the things you believe in like that. But there comes a certain point when you have to put your thoughts and your beliefs behind the collective so that you can have that individualism. And that's just the way this works. That's the only way this has worked. And it's not impossible. I don't want to live in a world where the IRS is more protected than the children. I just don't. Full disclosure, though, I am really happy and I do love my life and I don't take baths. So, on that note, I'm going to go to bed finally. It's 2:45 in the morning where I live and I've almost lost my voice. Was thinking about going live tomorrow again, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to talk in the morning. It is the morning. I don't know if I'm going to be able to talk when I have to roll out of bed for my husband to wake me up with caffeine like he does every morning because he's the best husband ever. I don't know if he's watching right now. He's probably falling asleep or fell asleep